Hello, 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 hello. Welcome, welcome. I know, welcome. All right. So this is a follow-up to the last video I did about some 20. Was it 20 atheists or was it 25? I don't know. There's a little ambiguity there. So this is a follow-up. So they took two atheists from that show, the ones that kind of slam dunked Peterson, and they threw them on against Dyer and Andrew Wilson on the Piers Morgan show. So they're gonna get like a more organized debate. But let's see what they have to say. And I'm gonna be reviewing it. I'm gonna be the guy to like see if any of the arguments are good or like Jay Dyer is pretty damn good. Like I think he's probably gonna wipe the floor with these guys. But who knows? These like quippy, witty teenagers might have some interesting rhetorical victories, so we'll see.
Christian.
You say that. I haven't claimed that.
Oh, what is this? Is this Christians versus atheists?
I don't know.
You don't know where you are right now.
Don't be a smartass.
Well,
and I mean
either you're a
'cause I
Christian
won't
or you're
talk
not.
to you if you're a smartass.
Oh, either you're a Christian or you're not. Which one is it?
Danny, you were the smartass in the room, according to Jordan.
People can see the frustration that we have with Peterson. I would say that atheists are not the only ones that are frustrated.
We don't want
Christians
preamble.
are.
We have two gay
Right, you're not a Christian.
Okay, I'm done with him.
Well, now, in the wake of that video, one of Peterson's young inquisitors posted on X, Peterson was no Christian. Let's move on. Are there any actual Christians that want to debate? Which is quite the challenge. But one that, of course, we on Uncensored are only too keen to facilitate. So making their uncensored debut from the Danny Phil Talk channel, Danny Shaw, and Parker from the Parker Get a Job channel. And we've arranged for them to take on two of the most notorious and fearsome debaters on the internet, who also happen to be conservative Christians. The king of blood sport debating, Andrew Wilson from The Crucible, and the equally forthright author, comedian, and commentator, Jay Dyer from the Jay Dyer channel. Welcome.
Jay Dyer's looking like smooth, bro. He's got like the Aryan owl eyes fucking going. Love his background, all the books.
To all four of you. Well, let me start with you, Parker. Were you surprised by the reaction to what went down with Jordan Peterson?
Actually, no. I was actually expecting this to happen, as I knew before this, as I watched the Alex O'Connor debate against Jordan Peterson, that he was very, very not likely to, like being associated with Christianity. So I knew actually going into this that I was going to ask him a question specifically.
Which, if you know Peterson's background, you know why. You know that when he was a teenager, he was an avid atheist. He was anti-Christian. He called Christians stupid and unintellectual. So Peterson has beef with Christians from his past. And so what Peterson wants to do is he wants to take the conservative Christian values and the intelligent, sensible conservative points without having to recognize Christianity itself, which is intellectual thievery, because it's taking Christian stuff without recognizing where it comes from. So
about whether or not he believes this to be the case, and that he would likely be not very upfront with his answer. So I actually kind of expected there to be a response like this. Now, I didn't expect it to go as viral as it did, as there are literally tens of millions of views on clips associated with mine and Danny's against Jordan Peterson all over social media. So it's actually really cool to see that, everyone across the board, whether it be Christians, atheists, Muslims, right, etc., actually see that like he's really not wanting to answer the question there because he doesn't want to be associated with Christianity for some reason.
And for that debate specifically, it's problematic that he's ambiguous because his claim was that atheists don't understand God, and for him to kind of say that definitively, he has no justification for his own definition of God. Peterson as this like agnostic, atheist, Jungian weirdo. Like he has no authority to claim I have the right definition of God and you guys don't. It's like, well, like Peterson doesn't have a concrete worldview, so it was a valid question.
Danny, I mean, you were the smartass in the room, according to Jordan. What's been your reaction to the fallout?
I'm generally happy that that people can see the frustration that we have with Peterson. I would say that atheists are not the only ones that are frustrated. Christians are, right? Here we have Peterson saying things like, yeah, I think Jesus might have resurrected, but I don't know what that means. Yeah, I might be a Christian in some sense. I'm a one-of-a-kind Christian. It's all wishy-washy. We're all frustrated, and I think that the video is the culmination of that frustration.
I mean, that's a good point. You either believe Jesus rose from the dead or you didn't, or you don't. There's no like, well, he kind of resurrected, but what does that mean? It's like, no, like if Jesus Christ rose from the dead, then he is divine. And everything he said was true. Like, there's no, well, there's no logical, coherent position that denies the divinity of Christ, but also, like, recognizes the resurrection. It just makes no sense. So the atheist position and people like Peterson aren't atheist because of some kind of logical, coherent worldview. Instead, it's an emotional reaction where they just don't like Christians and they don't want to be associated with them.
Okay, well, the good news, like I told you, is we found two far from shy Christians to take you on in this arena. Andrew Wilson, let me start with you. What was your reaction to these two and their showdown with Jordan Peterson?
I mean, I kind of have to agree with Danny a little bit. It's like, he, you know, like people have been wanting this guy to take the position on whether he's a Christian or not a Christian forever, on the right, the left, center, basically across the board. Now, I'll always be in some ways grateful to Jordan Peterson. He was one of the first who kind of started the trend of standing up to the pronouns people, which was pretty epic to watch. But, you know, ultimately, you know, he's kind of a shell of his former self. He didn't look great going through that debate. He looked kind of run down. I think that him being on with the Daily Wire probably hasn't been great for him. He's not he doesn't have the kind of edge that he used to have. But ultimately, I mean, I was actually kind of glad to see it. You know, it's about time we know, are you or aren't you? You know, get off the shit or get off the pot, essentially, right? Are you a Christian or aren't you a Christian? That's a fair question.
And it's not just for us. Like for Peterson, it's especially damaging for himself because without a clear stance on something as foundational and as critical as religiosity, deity, Christ or not, or if you don't have a concrete stance on these positions, then you lack a sensible foundation on which to develop a more complex, sophisticated worldview. And what you see with Peterson is he's really just devolved into a series of profound rambling. That's what he's doing. It's a bunch of profundity, a bunch of rambling, a bunch of complex, ambiguous espousals with no grounding. So a person like Peterson really doesn't have the kind of wisdom or the kind of insight that you get from someone with a more coherent, definitive, defined, structured worldview. Like someone like Dyer or Andrew Wilson, they're going to have a much more... But at least as an atheist, you can make concrete claims and you can kind of like say things definitively, like this is true, this isn't. And otherwise, you just kind of devolve into this like non-committal waxing where you're like, well, there's a thing and that's something and that's not nothing, bucko. And it's like you just devolve into this like old man boomer not really saying anything. And if you listen to Peterson videos, you'll notice he doesn't actually really say anything. Like he doesn't make committed statements. He just like presents these like apparently profound dilemmas, and it's like, okay, it's actually not very helpful by and large, especially for people who need direction, and really they need a stable foundation. People lack a foundation today in our modern world. People are aimless and lost, and someone like Peterson doesn't really have that kind of a foundation that they could give to young men, and it leaves much to be wanted.
And Jay, I mean, ultimately, these two young men on the panel today, they're sworn atheists. You obviously are not. So if you were actually conducting a debate about their atheism against your Christianity, how would you take them on, given what happened to Jordan?
Well, it depends on what you mean. Depends on what you mean. You know, how would I take them on? Well, I think there's a lot of different ways that you could critique an atheist position. Most of the time, I argue from the three branches of philosophy: epistemology, metaphysics, and ethics. Those are just the three branches of any worldview, and everybody has a worldview, whether they know it.
That's not really a good answer, actually, simply because nobody really knows anything about these subjects. So it's not the kind of thing you can get into on like a Piers Morgan show. So I would have said something much simpler, like, well, Piers, there's a huge problem with the atheists, which is that if you get rid of God and everyone's just a, evolved creature, then where do we get all these moral oughts from? I mean, how is atheism right or wrong? How is, I don't know, like trans rights good or bad? How can you claim that all these things are good and bad if you have no source for where the good and the bad come from? And that's a huge problem with the atheist worldview, is that they make all these moral claims all the time, like, oh, bullying transgenders is wrong. Oh, this is right, this is wrong. Pedophilia is wrong, but homosexuality is okay. And it's like, well, what's the grounding for these things? How do we know that they're not going to devolve or slip over time? And they don't have no grounding. But as a Christian, we have a grounding, because we can say they're commanded from God. They come from his nature. We have things called sin and vices and virtues. And this helps us clear up where our morals come from. But I would say a lot of atheists are hypocritical, because they make all these moral claims about what's good and what's bad, but they don't have a source for these things. Especially if we're just evolved creatures, then we don't really know, like, how you would get like a moral paradigm simply from evolved creatures, right? And if, say, we were on the topic of homosexuality, well, if we were looking at it from an evolutionary standpoint, there's no real evolutionary advantage to homosexuality. In fact, quite the opposite. So it's incoherent. It's using philosophical tools like morals, which everyone just takes for granted, but you actually have to justify those. You have to give an account for where those come from in your world. You have to explain how you're able to use those tools and where's the justification for them. And atheists can't really do that. They just de facto arbitrarily assume they exist. Well, they just are. Logic just is. Morals just are. And it's one that's arbitrary. So that's arbitrary and made up. You're just assuming that it just is. Well, it just is. And it leaves many questions to be asked. But then it's also a double standard, because if you're going to say, well, morals and logic and ethics just are, then I can say that God just is. And at least within my worldview, I can give an account for where logics and morals comes from, but you can't. So you're just de facto arbitrarily assuming these things, right? And I can give an account of where God comes from, because I can give arguments for God, like the transcendental argument, right? Or there's other arguments that are not as strong. But, so yeah, if I was Jay, I would make it about a specific point that people can relate to. Like, hey, you say trans is good. Where are you getting the concept of the good from within your worldview? Where does the good come from? Where do morals come from? If we're just evolved creatures that evolved randomly, and all of our morals are just things that evolved randomly for no reason other than just to help us survive, then where do we get these big moral claims from? And it seems to me it's arbitrary, and the way I would prove that is look at how much our morals have changed. Because 50 years ago, 70, 100 years ago, homosexuality was illegal. Everyone considered it immoral. Oh, it's a bad thing. And now it's okay. So we've seen a large, just random shift in our morals. Even just 15, 20, 30 years ago, people would have seen transgender as completely absurd and immoral. How dare you chop off a young teenager's genitals? That's horrible. You're messing with their hormones. That's got to be child abuse. But now it's okay. And how do we know that something like pedophilia isn't going to be normalized under the same kinds of arguments? Well, you're just a bigot. You're just rude. You're discriminating against love. And you're a mean person. And you're backwards. And that's just a Christian perspective. And et cetera, et cetera. Especially when we have Muslims who would be in favor of such a position and love to see that normalized. It doesn't seem like a stretch to think that maybe leftists combined with a Muslim paradigm would start eroding the age of consent. And then what that really means is that the atheist morals are unmoored, and they're not based on anything, they're just made up. And that's kind of a problem if you're going to make moral statements as an atheist. That means that they're just arbitrary, and they're just your personal preferences, right? So that would be my argument, would be something like, well, they have an incoherent worldview. They are trying to use philosophical tools like morals that they have no justification for. and that makes their worldview kind of shitty.
Consciously or not. So I would critique the foundations of the atheist materialist worldview to see if it's rational, if it's coherent, if it can provide a justification for knowledge or ethical oughts. So I think that would have been a much better route. In fact, Peterson used to kind of take that approach when he debated Sam Harris. He would call out the is-ought problem with Sam Harris. When he debated Matt Dillahunty, he would call out the exact same types of.
That's right. Yeah, no, he did. I saw this. I saw the Dillahunty one. Yeah. Yeah, he was actually fairly good at. He would randomly have moments of sentience where he would like actually critique atheists, but these ones are just kind of like arbitrary, and it's like very ambiguous and weak. It almost makes me think maybe Jubilee intervened on a lot of the questions and forced Peterson to present specific questions. Could be
Preconditions for a worldview issue that I used to do, or I usually do. So I think that'd be a better route than just sort of having this ambiguous, Jungian position of non-committal, whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, I would say to you, Parker and Danny, that I've interviewed Jordan Peterson a lot, maybe 5-6 times on Uncensored. Quite long interviews, often quite emotional. He's an emotional guy. I would disagree with Andrew about him losing his edge. I think he's still got the edge. I also think that putting aside the whole debate about Christianity and whether
I would say he has kind of lost his edge. Like his old age is definitely showing. He's sounding more like a boomer. He's relying on kind of like rhetoric, and he has less snap, and the ideas come slower. They've got less edge to them. Like he used to have a certain, like his train of thought generally is slower. His speech is slower. His ideas are less complex, and you could even hear it in the debate he did where he's like, he just restated his position. He's like, well, my point is that atheists reject God, but they don't understand what they're rejecting. It's like, okay, well, that doesn't help at all to just restate the prompt that's on the screen for everybody. So he definitely has lost his edge. Like, definitely. He's definitely getting older. And the drugs probably have taken a toll on Peterson's mind. And he's had mental health problems his whole life. Oh, what's up, guys? I've spelled atheist wrong. What a silly goober I am. I spelled atheist wrong. 1 second, gentlemen. What a silly Billy I am. I spelled atheist. Oh, I'm just wrong, guys. Ignore everything I said. I'm just completely wrong. Why? Because I spelled atheist wrong. It just invalidates everything I say.
he is or not. He's always been oddly ambiguous about it to someone who's so unambiguous about everything else. But that's his right. He's entitled to do that. As a force for good, though.
Is he, though? Is he entitled to be ambiguous about Christianity when he's debating atheists and his questions are posed against atheists? And really, the video was one Christian versus 20 atheists. It wasn't Jordan Peterson versus atheists, right? So, not really.
Young men. I do think that in comparison, for example, to Andrew Tate, that Jordan Peterson has been a far better influence over the minds of young men of your kind of age.
I mean, sure, but by what standard? That's kind of the question Jay was like posing, is like, sure, maybe according to consensus or like normative appeal, maybe you could say, oh, I think Peterson's better, but from my perspective, they're both atheist like assholes, kind of. Peterson is very greedy. He wants lots of money. He sells his books. He's got a lot of pride. He wants to do philosophical waxing and sound really profound. And then Tate is just a scammer. He's just a walking hustler looking to take young men's money by any means necessary. So he sells this image of like being this masculine red pill dude bro just so he can make more money off of men. So yeah, sure, Peterson might be better, but I don't know. They're both atheists, so who cares?
Than someone like Andrew Tate would ever be. Would you agree with that, Parker?
I actually would agree with that, although the bar is literally in hell.
I mean, that's ironic. That's ironic coming from the atheists that you're going to use our language of like, oh, heaven and hell. You know what I mean? They always do this. They always like, oh, my name's Alex O'Connor and I'm British and I do believe in God. I'm unconvinced. And then they'll use like, oh, hell, it's in hell. Oh, so you believe in the concept of hell, do you? What's that from? Oh, Christianity.
Right. I mean, you must see some positives in the general messaging that Jordan gives for young men about wanting to improve their lives, wanting to empower themselves, opening up and so on. I mean, do you accept that about him?
I think it's good to open up, and I think it's good for like men to like want to improve their lives, but we also need to be very specific on like what is improving towards their lives. And I honestly don't think that like Jordan Peterson, like within all respects, would be upholding that. But sure, I can say he's better than.
Agree. Yeah, he's actually hypocritical in many of his own areas. He's like, be responsible, have your shoulders back, be this, be that. But I mean, Peterson's posture sucks. One, two, he doesn't have his life put together. He's on benzos. He raised a single mother daughter. Like, Peterson is not a role model. At least Andrew Tate is what he says he is, which is he's like a hustling, money making. Now he's actually not that masculine, but I think he does work hard, and I think he is like a hustler type dude. But is Peterson actually this profound, wise father figure? I would say no. So he presents himself falsely, and I would say that's one thing Tate has over the other ones. Is Tate pretty obviously portrays himself out to be a ruthless scammer, hustler dude. He's not pretending to be your friend. He's not pretending to care about you or care about young men. He's just, I'm here to make money. I'm here to hustle. Here's how to be like me.
Someone like Andrew Tate, like I think that's pretty obvious.
Danny, what's your view of Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson when it comes to their influence on young men? Because it is huge.
Yeah,
with both of them, I can tell you, when I walk around, most people under 25 who are male.
Which is also a problem because, like, if Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson appeal to young men, the only way they're going to get millions and millions and tens and hundreds of millions of followers and support is if they're atheists, right? Because most people are secular, most people are not super committal, non-religious, and the only way to get like mass appeal from these people is by reducing yourself to like the lowest common denominator type shit of like, be masculine, like make money, buy a Bugatti. Or Peterson of his like, now I don't like transgenders and I don't like it when you censor my speech. It's like, okay, so it's like the most low tier positions, and it's incredibly unoffensive. And so you should be skeptical of anyone who has 100 million views or followers, because most people are shit. And if they're appealing to most people, then they're probably not that great.
Come up and they ask me either about Andrew Tate or Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, I feel like the question is like asking a Republican, is Joe Biden better than like Mussolini, right? I mean, it's such a vast difference. I would say that it seems like that Jordan Peterson has benefited people, mostly in the psychology realm, like, the whole 12 rules for life and stuff, which a lot of those rules seems to be rules that my grandma could tell me. But granted, the point is that, yeah, he's probably helped people. I have no problem with saying that.
All right, Andrew, let's turn to some other issues here. One is Pride Month. Now, my view of this is I don't understand why we need a whole month for Pride. I don't even get an hour as a.
That's the wrong question. It's like, oh, they're taking up too much time. Well, it shouldn't be one day for Pride. We shouldn't be celebrating faggots and homosexuals and queers and trannies and alphabet people at all, because it's immoral, it's degenerate, it's sexually perverse, it's a sin, and it's bad. Now, most people don't have the moral backbone or the balls to say it like that. They'll go, well, that's mean, you're not being loving and accepting and tolerant. And they get all offended and emotionally butthurt when you say it like that. But that's the reality. That's what the Bible commands us. And they're very clearly sexually degenerate. Like, they're very obviously not sexually restrained. They're not like chaste, respectable, normal people. They're always like just like sexually open and out there, and it's gross, and it is a sin. And I think people generally are turned off and not have a subtle conscience against these things, even if they're not openly Christian. I think they kind of intuitively understand that these like ugly, blue-haired, like fat trans people are demonic and gross, and they represent some kind of sin, or at least in their perspective, they would psychologize it. So, oh, it's a mental illness. It's a pathology. It's like, well, no, it's more like a demonic takeover of the human being at that point. There's a demon, Baphomet, which is this goat-headed thing, and it has both genitalia. So they're actually like embodying the spirit of Baphomet. So I would insert a religious connotation and lens upon it. But I think people can kind of intuitively understand that this is fucked up, and we don't want this around children, definitely, which is what's happening. Is you have drag queen people doing story time with kids, and this kind of literature and propaganda is being pushed into the public school system when people are still teenagers or younger. Porn is being thrusted upon people at the age of like 9, 10. So this is sexually perverse, degenerate. It's destroying the family unit, etc., etc. So it's not about, oh, it's a whole month. It's a whole month. Well, it's gotta be a whole month. It's more like there shouldn't be a single day. It's all bad. And nobody's willing to tackle these more foundational questions.
The straight guy. So why do we need a month for Pride? And it's not because I'm remotely homophobic, because I'm not. I'm the complete opposite.
I am.
I've always absolutely supported gay rights. I just don't get why we need to have a month of Pride. Beans creatine.
Okay, let's move on. Why do we need a whole month for Pride? This is tricky because, like, okay, I'm not going to convince everybody to be homophobic. Okay, so I have to come at it from Pierre's perspective, which is, why do I need a whole month? Because the thing you've signed yourself up for, Piers, is once you start accepting left-wing premises like Pride is okay, then they do this runaway, give Satan an inch and he'll take a mile bullshit, where no, it's not just enough to be slightly left-wing. You have to worship Baphomet. You have to get on your knees and suck the unholy phallus, and you have to give us an entire month. And it's not just enough to be a trans person in our room, like a sensible person. No, we have to spread it everywhere. We have to put these imperialistic pride flags on every institution, every school, every police station, in the military, because it's a societal conquering and ideological takeover. And that's the thing you've signed yourself up for. So that's why we have this whole month of Pride. There's no good reason for it. Some people will rationalize and cope post hoc and say that, oh, well, no, we need a whole month because it's super important. And even though it's only 1% of the population, we need an entire month to celebrate these people. And it's important, and we need to remind people there's lots of homophobia out there. We need to remind people not to be homophobic. As if shoving pride flags is going to convince homophobes to like you more. If anything, it's going to make them hate you more. So, you know what I mean? Like, if you were decent, respectable people, gay people, if you were decent, respectable people, egalitarian people like Piers Morgan and Joe Rogan would be more willing to accept you and be tolerant of you. But they've become so left-wing, so rabidly Marxist and so left-wing with their gay stuff that they've pushed away all the people. And why is this the case? Is because it's a demonic force. It's a demonic influence. And there is no, like, sensible, like, line of, approach where it's like, oh, we just want a reasonable amount of sexual rights. No, it's a degenerate, perverse fetish, and fetishes escalate. That's the nature of addictions, demonic impulses, sins, degeneracies, is they continue to degenerate, and they demand more and more and more because they're not built on solid principles that are defined and concrete and exist. No, they're just continual spiritual degenerations, and that's why they now need a whole month, and they need flags everywhere, and they need to castrate all of the evil white men, and now they need to transition your children and invade your public school system because it's a demonic takeover. That's why. That's the only way to explain it, is it's a... because think about it this way. If it was like a normal, sensible position, like say, oh, I want freedom of speech. Well, then you would get freedom of speech and then you'd be happy. You wouldn't be like, now I need more freedom of speech. I need everyone saying the N-word constantly. It's like you would just get the freedom of speech and then you'd be fine because it's a principle. When you aim at a principle and you get the principle, then you're happy. But a demonic perverse fetish or degeneracy or addiction continually needs to ramp up and continually escalate and degenerate because of its nature as a degenerate, perverse thing, a fetish, an addiction, right? So we can see by the trajectory of the thing that it's not based in like egalitarian, fair, just principle. It's actually based in demonic, degenerate fetish. So that kind of proves my argument that it's not just some innocuous, nice, we just want rights. It's like, well, no, you want to take over the public school system and indoctrinate children at the age of 12 to be gay.
There's an article that came out, you can find in the Drudge Report, it came out today from, I believe it was Daily Telegram. It's pretty interesting. They went over, a lot of the...
But, okay, so why do you need a whole month, Piers? Is because you have implicit homophobia built into you as a white man, and that needs to be purged from your system by shoving 1 month of gay pills down your throat.
The modern Trump administration, what they have done with their executive orders, a lot of companies have begun moving away from trying to kind of fund this, and it hasn't been popular for the last couple of years anyway. There's been a lot of pushback on various large corporations, companies, and NGOs for trying to pump kind of artificially these organizations. One of the things that article points out, which I tend to agree with, is that, hey, look, ultimately, when these...
Andrew is like kind of floundering. He's not really making coherent sentences, which is weird. I wonder if these guys lose to these random, stupid 19-year-old kids. That'd be kind of embarrassing. But what's the point he's making? He's saying it's propped up by NGOs. It's true. It's astroturfed very much. And yeah, that should also make egalitarians and sensible, rational individuals skeptical. If you're seeing massive corporations band behind pride and push it, it's not just that they're forced to or that it's like profitable, because it's not. Most men are straight. Most men don't like sucking dick, and most people don't like political extremism. It's generally not good for business to have extreme political positions. It's better to be quiet about these things when it comes to politics and religion and whatnot, because that just alienates customers. And it does. You see the Bud Light with Dylan Mulvaney. You've seen, what's that fashion brand? 8 Spades or something like that. Some fashion brand. They just went under. You see all the Disney movies go woke, go broke. People are boycotting Disney, boycotting these industries because they continually push Marvel, right? This kind of trans propaganda, and it's hurting businesses. So why would a business actively push something that A, alienates its customers and makes it less money, but B, why would we have these massive corporations run by often rich billionaires or like trust fund groups and like these subtle roundtable-esque, Milner Group-esque organizations? Why would they be supporting trans rights? And often they're these white men, by the way, they're straight white men, these overlords running these companies supporting gay rights. It's like, well, why is that happening? Could it be it's part of the evil billionaire plan to like turn everyone gay? Could it be that creating like a sexually degenerate society is like good for their plan? I mean, how would I explain it? One, there's the demonic element where any kind of opening up people to moral degradation is good. It's good for business. The other one is that people like Larry Fink and WEF and Jews want to destroy moral foundation and destroy Western Christian values and replace it with social programming because they want that, and it's not for profit, but it's because of beliefs that they have, and it's a ideological warfare. It's not based on profit. And then they impose that onto businesses. They say, we will give you a loan, we will continue to let you operate and receive funding from investment groups like BlackRock or Vanguard or what's the other one? JP Morgan, Chase. If you do this, do XYZ, it's called the ESG score, environmental, social, what's the other one? Grade, maybe? governance, environmental, social, and governance. It's basically a credit score for companies, and then they get investments and funding from Jewish, Soros-esque, Larry Fink-esque businesses, as long as they push gay stuff. So that's one reason, is that to get investment money from rich, liberal, Jewish, open society, social, Fabian socialist-esque billionaires, they need to play their game and they need to promote pride stuff. That's one element of it. Another element of it is that I'm trying to think, why do businesses support these massive things? Should be skeptical. Anyone should be skeptical if it's not organic, if it's not grassroots, if it's being propped up by billionaires with clear agendas that go against people's interests, that does not help people but helps these massive businesses and hidden roundtable groups, that we should be naturally skeptical of why they would do that. Yeah, I would have to think more, but we'll see in a minute.
These companies are doing this. People lose trust for them. You remember there was a big thing with Target not that long ago.
Yeah, Target.
Anytime this comes to light, there's actually a backlash. People can kind of see that it's artificially held up. There's no reason for it. It's silly. It has never really been about gay rights. It's
what do you
been
mean
about
there's no
weird.
reason for it? What do you mean?
It's
what do you mean
been.
there's no
It's also inappropriate. Businesses have no right or no business involving themselves with political or sexual rights. It's not the purview of a business like Walmart to dictate support for a movement. It's kind of outside. Like, your job as Walmart is to sell me my cookies and my dish cleaner soap and then let me go home, not push pride flags on the glass doors, right? Like, it doesn't make sense. So that should make you skeptical. But yeah, so why do they do it? Part of it is just there's pressure from activists and rich people with money to make it happen, and then the businesses are, I think the businesses are just submitting to the pressure from rich liberals in general to push these things, so they do it. Because I don't think most business owners actually really care or really support these things. Like, I don't think the owner of Walmart or the owner of these various franchises do it because they really, really care about gay rights. And it loses money, so it's actually a bad decision in general. But I think they do it because there's pressure. And movements like the gay rights movements, the trans movement, LGBTQ movement, are very high pressure. They're very Marxian in that way. They apply a lot of pressure. They're very imperialist. They're very visible, visual, loud, obnoxious, aggressive. And sometimes that creates pressure on businesses to capitulate. And that could be it too.
Well, because it's
What
always
do you mean
really
there's no reason
about,
for it, right?
Yeah, I'm
They're
trying to
bullies like you.
Do you want me to answer?
Right?
Do you want me to answer the question or no?
Yeah, you can go ahead, and I'll explain to you why I think there's the reason after.
Okay. Yeah. So there's no real reason for it. It's been about pushing sexual perversions. Never really been about anything to do with homosexuals themselves not having rights or having rights. It's never been about that. It's been about weird gay pride parades and all kinds of weird sexual stuff. It really has never been about that, and that's what the American people think. That's what.
And yeah, okay. So, I mean, if we go down the it's being pushed from above lens, people like Soros and their open society vision are using the businesses, using the institutions like the military, police force, schools. They're using them as tools to socially program people. So the reason you see pride flags in Walmart is because people have to go to Walmart, and so they have to encounter these pride flags everywhere. And that's a way to socially program people to capitulate to peer pressure and societal domination. And it's a social programming tool by capturing these businesses and saying, we support pride flags. Then everyone who walks in that store is now reminded that a big, wealthy, and established business now supports this thing. And it's just a way to, it's a medium by which to transmit ideology and social pressure onto the public, because you can't really do it anywhere else. right? If like they're doing it in every way they can. They push it in the media, they push it in the news, they push it in on the face of buildings, they push it on everywhere. So the business is just a way to get individuals to capitulate to the social programming. It's a medium by which to transmit this kind of ideology. That's all. That's the reason why. And then the reason why do they want to push this? Because they want an open society by which they can more easily manipulate people into doing what they want, and they want to remove morals. They want to remove what they view as like there's a very complex ideology at play. It's like transhumanist. It's kind of like but it's deeply anti-Christian. It's deeply anti-morals. They see them as restrictive and hateful and evil, and not as good or as protective or as self-guarded, right? So they just have a different conception of morality, and people at the top, these billionaires, are kind of convinced in their beliefs, and then they push them onto the public by commanding these businesses, right? And so what you really have is you have like the ideology of these billionaire elite Jews, and then the question is like, okay, does someone who's a billionaire who runs all these companies, who's willing to weaponize social programming and do all these evil things and made their money by being like an evil, conniving Jewish business owner, is that someone we should really trust for our belief system? If you hold the same worldview as a corrupt billionaire dude, is that a good thing? Or is that like a sign that you're on the wrong team, right? Because I would probably be inclined to think that someone who is a billionaire is going to have a bad worldview, right? Probably not a great, super altruistic. They're not going to be in touch with what the people need. They're not going to be on the side of like morals. They're going to be on the side of like making money themselves, and like these erudites, like not connected with reality, like self-aggrandizing billionaire positions that don't reflect reality or the conditions of the working class, right? So, yeah. And it's kind of ironic too, right? Because Marxist ideology comes from the billionaire class, which is something we've seen before. That's not the first time. But once again, we're seeing it again, where this kind of like Marxist, like deconstructionist worldview and its beliefs are now being transmitted by billionaire elites. It's quite ironic.
What they see. That's why you see companies moving away from it.
No, I don't think that's true. Look, they're gay people, like let's take you for example. You're the reason, right? When I first talked to you, right, we were having a normal debate about, I think, morality, and then you randomly asked me, "What's your, are you a homosexual?" As to
And you were, right?
Down, right? And then
right?
also with
But hang on, was I right though? Was I right?
I'm not a homosexual. No, I'm married to a woman.
You said that you were bisexual. You said that you were bisexual.
Right.
Oh. I'm not homosexual. I'm a bisexual. I only suck dick some of the time. Okay.
That's homosexual is not the same as bisexual.
There's certain ways.
Terms, but
the point is certain ways.
I mean, he is right. It is different because a lot of homosexuals like have a strong disgust reaction to women, and often starts with disgust more than attraction to men. So fine, but I mean, for the sake of the argument, the point is that you're a sexual degenerate. That was the point Andrew was trying to make, and you're just fighting for your own self-interest. Like you're not fighting on principle, you're fighting on self-interest. Although that is an ad hominem. That is technically an ad hominem.
People like you and Jay Dyer bully LGBTQ people.
Everyone's
that's why
bullied,
pride, because of the kind of stigma.
So that's not really an argument. Oh, you're a bully. You're a mean bully. Stop bullying me. That's like not really an argument. That's just an emotional reaction. And so what if I bully people online? Like, you can't take harsh words. You can't take criticism. You can't take a debate. Aren't you supposed to be this great debater? I'm a great debater. I'm so smart and I'm Mr. Smartass. But then someone debates you and is picking on you. Oh, I mean, you're a bully. You're mean. It's like, you can't have both sides where you're this smart, sophisticated, rock solid intellectual, but then also at the same time you're just a victim of bullying. It's like which one's it going to be?
That you promote.
Okay, so here's the thing that's so funny about this is like, if both me and Jay Dyer, both of us assumed that you were a homosexual and both of us were right, That's what's so funny about it. We
Again,
both assumed you were
why are you saying
gay,
I'm homosexual?
and we were both correct that you were
Andrew.
gay.
Andrew, is there
The
anything
point is
wrong
that
with
we
him
were
being
happy-
gay?
Go ahead, Parker.
Huh?
Is there anything wrong with him being gay?
There's
Yes.
a problem with you guys supporting NGO-funded kind of AstroTurf program to promote rights.
Now wait, why is Andrew dodging that? I mean that's clearly a trap, but by avoiding the trap, you just look like Peterson. You look like an intellectual coward. So I would say yes, from my worldview as a Christian, there is something wrong with being gay, but also that's not the topic of the debate, and I'm not here to talk about. I mean, we can if you want, but I thought the topic of the debate was about Pride Month, not about homosexuality being a sin or not in of itself, because of course it is, right? So what kind of dumb question is that? You're just trying to trap Andrew into saying something that's going to make him look bad to most people, because most people support homosexuality.
Which aren't even about promoting rights.
Was that a response to what he just said?
The whole ordeal here is, but well.
So Andrew should have said, that's not relevant. The debate about the topic is Pride Month. What I individually believe, that's not relevant. The debate is Pride Month. I actually don't have to talk about my beliefs at all. It's actually technically not relevant at all to the debate. I can debate anything or have a discussion about anything without involving my personal worldview at all, because we're debating ideas, not each other. So if I'm debating a particular worldview, I can critique it without having to impose or present my own worldview. I could embody a particular worldview for the sake of kind of a comparative analysis, but that doesn't necessarily have to reflect me. So him asking that question of like, well, what are you? It's actually technically irrelevant, because the debate isn't about, it's not about you or it's not about me. It's about Pride Month in of itself.
The prompt, Parker. The prompt is about pride.
That's right.
And so
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
supporting an AstroTurfed, completely AstroTurf NGO-funded thing. It has nothing to do with gay rights at all, and people don't like it, Parker. They don't like it, Parker.
Well, Parker,
So that
I would
wasn't
ask
an
you.
answer
I
to
would
my-
ask Parker this. Look, I mean, look, Andrew, you said
my
some
question.
things which I completely disagree with about this issue. You said women will never truly understand why men find homosexuality so depraved. We don't.
That's true. I've never thought about that, but do women have the same disgust reaction to homosexuality that men do? I actually never thought about that. That would definitely explain where all our sexual mores went. Is as society is feminized, our morals have feminized, and because they've feminized, we've become less averse to gay porn. That's a good question. I actually don't know the answer. Do women have the same kind of disgust I would say no. I would be implied. I would suggest no, because women don't really have a conscience the same way that men do when it comes to sexual mores. Like, men intrinsically know that something like a fetish isn't inherently degenerate. Like, men subconsciously have guilt for these things, and often the guilt is actually part of the fetish. But seems like women don't. Like, from my anecdotal experience, it seems like women don't have that same sense of gravity and guilt when it comes to sexual degeneracies, and I would assume the same for homosexual men. So that's a good question. Could be the case.
think there's a problem there. We know there's a problem there. I'm a man. I don't find homosexuality remotely depraved. I think people's sexuality is what it is. So I don't agree with you
Their sexuality is what it is. That's a meaningless non sequitur. A equals A. Okay, that means nothing.
with some of the statements you've made. However, Parker, I am increasingly bemused why, when there are so many important things in the world to worry about, we devote a whole.
So yeah, so Piers Morgan, here's how I'd clear it up. As I'd say, there's well-meaning, white, typically, egalitarian, fair, middle ground people like you who just want people to get along, and you want to be fair, and you want to just give people rights and be nice, and on principle, you just want people to get along. The problem is that the people pushing this ideology upon you don't share that same sentiment. They're embodying a Marxist ideology which wants to engage in total societal takeover. It's the nature of the LGBTQ movement is that of a degenerative, addictive, demonic fetish which continually escalates. That's the nature of it. So they don't have the same, you don't have the correct conception of the movement that they're embodying. You're thinking of it as just, oh, just give people rights and don't offend people and just do whatever you want and be libertarian. They're thinking of it like, no, we need to transition your kid and we need to take over the world and plaster everything, plaster pride flags all over schools and businesses and conquer society and make it gay because that's part of their fetish. So you just have completely different conceptions of it, and you're not recognizing it for what it is. And then when you see these things, they seem puzzling to you because you don't have the correct framework to understand what is going on. So yeah, that's why there's a whole month, is because they're signaling that they are trying to dominate our minds, our conception of society. They're taking a whole ass month for Pride. You know what I mean? So it's like a big, loud, obnoxious, Marxian, degenerative takeover thing, not a just give everyone rights thing.
Whole month to gay pride. Why do we?
There are plenty of things that we specifically have months for to celebrate that I think are incredibly important.
What?
This, in this specific example, is incredibly important because of the dehumanization and
Like
the bigotry.
what? Name one other month that we have to celebrate a whole ass thing. So that's ChatGPT. Yes, Black History Month. But you never hear about these things. Women's History Month in March. Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage. Okay. Indigenous Month. Okay, so gay. Disability. But some of them, like December, there's nothing for December. It just seems made up. Black women in STEM business. Okay, this is gay. Well, just made up. So it's just made up. That's all made up.
Specifically by people like Dyer and Andrew Wilson, and explicitly kicking people off of their panels because they're gay, right, or because they're homosexual. Incredibly ridiculous.
But you know as well as I do, Parker,
can I please finish?
If you compare it, look, well, hang on, I would say if you go back 35, 40 years, I would completely agree with you. But the idea that that is still the case today, I just don't feel it. Do you? I mean, certainly young people in particular do not. It's just moved
Piers,
on.
Respectfully, how would you know as a straight person? Like, how would you? Do you experience it?
Those are both bad arguments. First of all, Twitter is not representative of reality. Just because there's like extremist people on Twitter doesn't mean that. Second of all, there's a difference between people having public opinion against a certain thing and you having rights of a certain thing. So people can be online and be on Twitter and bully you for being gay, but you can still go out in society and have the right to marry a gay man, right? So you might not like the fact that other people don't support you or don't like you or don't engage in your worldview, but if we're going to give everyone rights to be who they are and freedom to do whatever, then I have the freedom to be a straight Christian and not like what you're doing, right? So that'd be the first thing I would say, is that you're conflating public opinion and what people think of you to the rights you have. Just because people don't like you doesn't mean that there isn't a government which is forcing you to have rights against, really, I would think, other people like me who would disagree that you should have rights. But regardless of whether or not I disagree, or if there's a lot of people like me who disagree, which I actually don't think, I think it's a minority. I think Twitter is representative of a loud, obnoxious minority. And I think that regardless of what people say and what public opinion is, that doesn't affect your rights or what you're able to do in the society. And it's not really your purview to run around forcing social programming onto people until they submit to your particular view of things. That's not a free speech. That's not a egalitarian, open, free, do whatever you want society. That's a, you need to like me and support homosexuality, or else you're an evil person who needs to be lynched and killed. It's like, okay, so now we don't allow a diversity of perspectives. There's only one perspective allowed, which is everyone has to love and support gay people. And it's like, why can't we just encourage a plethora of perspectives where everyone's allowed to say their mind, speak their mind, and have their own opinion on things? I mean, right? Why is that not allowed? So that's the first thing I'd say. What was the other thing he said? He said Twitter. Have you been on Twitter? Let me just go back a second.
Because they're homosexual, which I think is incredibly ridiculous.
But you know
right?
as well as I do, Parker,
Can I please finish?
if you
Can I please
compare
finish,
it,
Piers?
look, well, hang on, I would say, if you go back 35, 40 years, I would completely agree with you. But the idea that that is still the case today, I just don't feel it. Do you? I mean, certainly
Piers,
young
have you
people,
never been on
young
Twitter?
people in particular, do not. It's just moved
Piers,
on. hasn't it?
respectfully, how would you know as a straight person? Like, how would you?
That's also retarded. That's an ad hominem. The idea that you can or can't know something because you're a particular gender. You wouldn't know, like, because we can't observe data or science or the institutions, or we can't get a glimpse of what societal perceptions and the societal ethos and zeitgeist is simply because we're not gay. That doesn't make any sense, right? So that doesn't seem like a good argument. If your argument was going to be that, like, well, you're just not experiencing all the bigotry from everyone because you're not a gay man, it's like, well, you would still witness bigotry secondhand as a straight guy, so that would still be possible if you were straight. Now, maybe you could say, well, you don't have any gay friends, you're not associated with gay people. It's like, okay, sure, fine, whatever, maybe it's possible that there's like a underground society of gay people who are just constantly experiencing bigotry and we just don't see them. But a lot of this sounds very speculative, and it's like weak argumentation, and it's not going to work against most people because most people are going to be like Piers. They're not going to have a bunch of experience of like bigotry. And I think most of these like liberal left-wing people, there's two reasons they experience bigotry. One is because you're super obnoxious, you're out in the open, and you're confrontational, and you don't get along. You're not like easygoing. You don't keep to yourself. You're not normal. You're not like a sensible person who just keeps to themselves and does it in their room like everybody else. You have to like broadcast it and like debate people and like get mad at people when they disagree with you. So your demeanor is very unlikable, and that's why you get hate. It's because you're an annoying, obnoxious prick, not because you're gay. That's one. And then the second reason is that most people are not like you. So most people are not going to relate to this. Well, how would you know? You're not a gay man. It's like, well, most people are going to rely on their experiences, and their experiences are going to be more like Piers. And Piers is right in that I don't really see or experience a lot of bigotry or hate. In fact, it seems like quite the opposite. Do you need a whole fucking month? Right? So I'm going to pause really quickly. I need to use the washroom. All right, we're back. We're almost an hour in. So yeah, I think we're learning a lot. I think this is
Do you
good.
experience
Piers,
it?
look,
Why are you assuming my
I want
sexuality?
to talk about.
Oh, we
Piers,
got
I
him.
wanna talk
He
about
got
my
him.
Because you've
experience.
talked
When I
about
went
it.
He got him. He got him.
viral. Years when I went viral, right? I had people message, saying, calling me the F slur, saying I had a gay list,
You are pretty
right? When
faggoty.
I'm married to a woman, right? If I'm not even a homosexual, and if people are bullying me,
Maybe just get off Twitter. And also, that's not bullying. Bullying is someone's beating you up, taking your lunch money, and shit over being a homosexual. And it's like, you can just turn off Twitter, dude. Just get off Twitter.
me for that, I can't imagine what actual homosexuals have to go through. So,
But what
there's
is, if you don't mind me
tons of-
asking, given it's now been sort of raised, and I'm not quite sure, are you straight? Are you bisexual? What's the
I'm
deal?
bisexual. I've been married to a woman happily for 5 years, and we're monogamous.
Okay, all
Two
right.
gaytheists. I want to chime in.
All right.
We have two gaytheists on the panel that have said that I bullied
See, like this
them.
kind of
and
behavior. Look at this behavior.
So, like, come on, dude. He's just playing around. He's fucking joking. Like, chill. Oh, look, he's bullying me. Like, no one likes you. Like, this is why you don't win the public over, is because you're just an annoying, like, unfunny, like, jagoff.
It's called a joke. That's called a joke,
Yeah,
sensitive
so
man.
funny, Jay Dyer.
Oh my
It's a
God, look at this
homophobic show.
behavior. This behavior is
This
out
guy-
of
You are
control.
two gaytheists,
It's too
so
much
it's
behavior,
not-
bad
wait,
behavior.
Wait, I'm sorry. Hold up. Are you guys Christians? I thought we're supposed to be loving to thy neighbor.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
the only
love
thing-
also includes telling you when it's
And yeah, okay, this is very common. Oh, I thought Christians are supposed to be loving. Well, Christians are also not supposed to allow gay marriage, actually. Where. And also the loving thing to do is not to let you continue in your degenerative sin. The loving thing to do would to be embody a masculine sense of love and put your foot down. Because, for example, you wouldn't let your child touch a stove. Oh, you're being a bigot. You're not letting your child touch the stove. Who are you to tell him not what to do? And you're restrictive. And I want liberation. And I touched the stove. And now trans people have mental illness. So it's kind of like this is a bad argument, because loving doesn't mean permissive. It doesn't mean being open and being libertarian and free and do whatever you want. That's not what loving means. Loving doesn't mean you have to be libertarian or egalitarian or whatever. So this is a misunderstanding of what love would mean, I guess. Because as a Christian, we would say you're in sin, and the loving thing to do would be try to get you out of sin, right?
It's wrong.
Don't
so-
you love trans people, Parker? You said that you would date a trans person. Remember that? Or was
Yeah,
it-
and what's wrong with that?
I think that
What's
you're
wrong
more,
with
I
that?
guess you are more loving than me than Parker. I wouldn't date a trans person. But,
Okay,
hey,
but, okay,
he's
is that
right.
supposed to be like
Two
a critique of
atheists.
me?
So the
Wait,
problem
what
is
happened to being
that
loving?
That is
these
gay.
guys
I
can't
asked
give an
you as
account
Christians.
for the
I called
good.
for you as Christians to be loving.
All they've
And both-
Okay, Jay's actually Jay's trying to go deeper, but you can't. Not on this panel. Like, this panel is too low IQ, and it's too normative. The Piers Morgan viewers are too low IQ. They're not going to understand, like, well, they don't have the epistemology and the ethics are not there, and they have no foundation, and I'm critiquing their worldview. It's like, they're not ready for that. So Jay Dyer is being a little too high IQ. He needs to, like, simplify his
Both of
Talked
you did
about
not
is
show
what's
loving.
right
You
and
just
You don't
showed
know what
being-
loving
you just showed
means.
being
You don't even know what that
bigoted.
means.
All right,
You
Let's
don't
not,
know
let's
what
not
loving
talk over each other, because no one can ever hear. Jay.
Yeah. So earlier in the first section, when we talked about Peterson, we were talking about what was good for men
Yeah.
and whether Tate was good or Peterson was good. And now we're talking about ethics in the sexual domain, which there's no basis in their worldview for anything to be morally,
What's the argument for
objectively
that?
right or wrong, other
Why
than
would
their
anyone
personal
believe that?
preferences. So if there are,
Why would
if there's
anyone
nothing
believe that, Jay?
objectively
You're just
wrong,
making a
there's
claim.
no reason why bigotry is wrong. Why is bigotry wrong?
Well, I want
Whoa,
support your
okay.
claim. Don't run from your claim. Support it. Right? We have no. You're saying we as atheists have no basis of morality. Support that.
Yeah, no epistemic basis for getting an ought from an.
That's really dumb. They don't have any. Like, the onus is on the atheist to provide a justification for ethics. You're saying, well, support that. Support. It's like, well, I'm putting your worldview into question. If you want to defend your worldview by saying you have a justification for ethics, that's on you. Basically, anytime an atheist uses the tool of ought, right, wrong, should, shouldn't, the onus now is on the atheist to justify the usage of morals. Because by using those words, they're implying morals, and now they have to give an account for those things. So it's not on Andrew, or it's not, he's completely misunderstanding. It's not on Jay Dyer to demonstrate that atheists don't have a foundation for morals. It's actually, the onus is on the atheists to justify where the fuck they get their ethics from to be using them in their language. But if you said that, I guess you could say, well, where do you get ethics from a bunch of randomly evolved creatures that just evolved to this randomly to, like, survive? Like, where do you get ethics from that? Where, like, why should I care about survival if the animals that survive just happen to survive because survival exists and not surviving doesn't exist? So we're existing in a state of survivorship bias where we're only seeing the creatures and the moral systems of creatures that just happen to survive, and all the ones that didn't survive just happen to not exist. So my question would be, if existence just is, right, just is, then, and the morals come from the just is, then where is the justification for the particular set of morals that humans have now? Other than, well, they just happen to because they evolved that way.
It is.
Yeah, that's
Which is also funny because you'll hear Matt Dillahunty say, well, it just is. Logic just is. And the reason he's saying that is because humans just are. They just happen to evolve. They just happen to survive. They just happen to be competitive. And the only justification for any of the things humans have is their existence, their continued survival and existence, which is the drive for their morals, is the continuation of their species. So when someone like Dillahunty says, oh, logic just is, morals just is, he's reflecting the innate qualities of the evolutionary biologist materialistic worldview, which is that everything we have as humans just is. It's just a product of survival, which A, makes it arbitrary, but B, that is not actually a justification for where we get those things. Because if these things just are, then why ought we follow them?
a claim. Okay, well, you're saying atheists
No, it's an
can't
argument.
account
It's a
for
famous
morality,
argument.
right? You're saying that atheists can't account for morality. So what's the argument for that?
That's retarded. I mean, the argument is that you need to provide justification for using those tools yourself. If you're using them, you have no warrant or right to use those tools. And so the onus is on you. That's the argument. But otherwise, I would say, well, you can't get... I mean, he's going to say it, so I'll let him say it.
You can't get an ought from an is the argument. Back to Hume.
It looks like you don't know what an argument is. Come on, reason. Try to go from one line of reasoning to another. Do you know what an argument
You
is?
cannot get an
Coward?
ought from an is. You're an atheist.
That's
In a
just
materialistic
okay, but what does that
worldview,
have to do
there's
with
no ought.
atheism? What does that have to do with atheism?
In a materialistic, atheistic worldview, there are no oughts.
First of all, I'm not a
You
materialist.
don't know the basic problem
and that's
of
just
ought
another
from is?
claim. That's just another
Not a claim, it's
Can
an
you see
argument.
claim?
It's a famous historical...
Look,
you don't know the
you're
difference
just a
between a
coward.
claim
You
and an
made a claim,
argument.
you can't defend it.
It's an argument. It goes back to David Hume.
Can you
Oh,
tell us
it's
what
a-
an
You don't know?
argument
He
is?
clearly doesn't know. He's clearly out of his league. Did you see that little thing he did with his eyes? He's like having a Adderall attack.
That's just another
Not a
claim.
claim,
Look at his
it's an
eyes.
argument. It's a famous historical...
Look,
you don't know
you're
the
just
difference
a
between a
coward.
claim
You
and an
made a
Watch
claim,
right here.
You can't defend it.
It's an argument. It goes back to David
Right
Hume.
here. See? You see
Oh,
that?
so
You don't know...
Argument.
That's the I have no clue what I'm doing. I'm trying to generate an argument, generate rhetoric, make him look bad. And he's not actually like able to engage with the argument because it's just woo going way over his head. He's never heard of David Hume, woo, way over his head. Ought from an is, woo, way over his head. You can't go from a bunch of is like humans did evolve this way. Humans exist this way. Our social evolutionary constructs exist this way. We have morals because they helped us cooperate as humans and survive, and they working together and having social codes as humans helped us evolve. That's an is. That's not. So why do we have to care about survival? Why do we have to care about human social cohesion? Why do we have to care about these things? Because anytime they give an is, well, we just have to say, well, we just go back a step and you say, well, why do we have to care about morals? Or why do we have to have the set of morals we do? Well, because they helped us survive. Okay, but why do we have to care about survival? Well, because that's just what, and you see it always, eventually it evolves to, that's just what is. So they completely nullify their ability to do moral argumentation because everything eventually, if you just keep going back a step, it just goes back to, well, that's what is. Well, that's just what is. Well, that's arbitrary. Your entire foundation for your morals is arbitrary and it's made up. And that's the point they're making. That's actually a pretty effective critique against any materialist atheist. And whenever they make morals, you just say, why is bigotry wrong? Well, bigotry is wrong because blah 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 blah. It's wrong because it's whatever, liberalism. Why is that wrong? Well, because we evolved this. Why is that the case? Well, because that's what's helped us survive. Well, why is survival important? Because that's just what happened. Okay, so that's just you're saying it just is, which is arbitrary, which means your entire moral system is arbitrary. So boom, you lose.
You know that,
right?
You don't know
Look,
the difference
everyone,
between.
look what just happened. Look what just happened. This guy said.
What just happened is that you didn't know the difference between an argument and a
Why are you
claim.
over talking me? Why are you scared? Let me talk, right? You just claimed that atheists don't have a foundation of morality. I asked you
True.
to defend it, and then you said you can't get an off from an is. What the heck?
That's the argument. That's correct.
Bro, yeah, he doesn't even understand. Yeah, he won't even let Dyer really explain for him. But that is the crux of the problem with atheists, is that all atheists do is they refer to science and they refer to evolution. Well, we got morals because humans evolved as social creatures, which needs... That's a bunch of ises. That's a bunch of phenomena. That's not a series of oughts. That's not an actual grounding justification for why we ought to do things. A Christian can come along and say, we ought not to be sexual degenerates because that's a sin. And we ought not to sin because that offends God. And we ought not offend God because he commands us to, right? You could say divine command theory. You could say, well, it's our nature. It's what we are commanded to do. It's the reason we're here. You could make a teleological argument. You could say we have been called to bring glory to God, and sin does not bring glory to him. It brings us out of communion with God. So whenever we sin, we yada, yada, yada. We fall out of grace with God. So a Christian can actually provide a basis for the ethics that we have, which is that they have a divine origin. And they have a divine commandment behind them. We are commanded by God. And we are necessitated by our shared nature with God as being made in his image to follow the commandments of God. Whereas an atheist can only really say, well, they just happen to evolve.
You're going to get from that premise, right? You can't derive
It's an
that
argument. It's not a premise. It goes back to David Hume. You just didn't know that.
Okay, can we get look? I think we're moving slightly off topic. Let's bring it back to Pride Month. I want to play something which has had a lot of people talking on social media. This is Sesame Street, where all the puppets holding hands, making up the Pride flag, and they say, on our street, everyone is welcome. Together, let's build a world.
Isn't this obviously social programming? They're taking advantage of beloved cartoons and children's TV, and oh, I'm just a cute little Elmo. I'm Elmo, and they're using these like innocuous, like familial, warm feeling in your heart. Oh yeah, I remember that from my childhood. Characters to engage in social programming and political activism. Shouldn't that be a red flag? Like, hey, they're taking advantage of my emotional faculties to get me to accept their position. Like, shouldn't that all like already signal dishonesty and flag sensible, rational people that, okay, this is a astroturfed fake movement that's deliberately taken advantage of human psychology to get people to get on their side, right?
Where every person and family feels loved and respected for who they are. Happy Pride Month. I guess I would say, Parker, again, the problem with this is it's this kind of enforced virtue signaling. It reminds me in a way, for very different reasons.
Well, it's very deliberate and it's very pernicious. And it's like a carefully crafted manipulation to get people onto your side. It's not presenting like a logical argument. It's not fair. It's deliberately contrived and crafted to manipulate people. And that alone should signal something isn't right to any average person.
The day in the George Floyd fallout, when everyone had to do a black square on their Instagram, or somehow they were racist, and I refused.
I found that so funny when people just put like random, oh yeah, I got Ukraine in my bio. It's like, okay, what is that? Okay, so what? Did you fight and die for Ukraine? No. So I put a black square in my bio. There we go. You did nothing, by the way. Like, there's still black people starving in Africa. You did nothing. It's just like fake virtue signaling, and none of the actual charity, none of the actual work, like helping clothe the naked or feed the hungry, that, you know, Jesus would command us to do. Instead, we have this like fake morality, secular morality, where it's just like, show social support by putting a trans flag in your bio. It's like, okay, well, you did nothing for trans people. You did nothing for gay people by doing that.
And everyone called me a racist. I went, why does putting a black square on my Instagram make any difference to anything? Again, with this, if you don't go along with the Pride Month.
Well, it's because they want social conformity. Why? I guess because then they won't question policy when it comes along.
Stuff.
They won't question the social change that happens under their nose if they implicitly support it.
Then
or explicitly.
How you must be homophobic is the kind of way this all seems to work. And I don't like that. I don't understand why we have to have any more these enforced things where everywhere you go for a whole month, everything's pride. Why? Why can't everyone just get on with their lives? Stop. And Borum Library.
Yeah, so like a way that I would respond to this is by saying that because of the bigotry and dehumanization that exists in our society, it's important to have these things for acceptance to decrease the level of bullying that exists in our society.
Okay, well, how do we have tolerance, but also push acceptance? Because that's not tolerant to people who aren't tolerant. And I actually used this in a debate, and the guy just completely did not have a response. I'm like, if you're forcing acceptance, that's not tolerant, because you're forcing conformity of viewpoints onto people, right? Like, if the political apparatus is already permissive towards you and your position, what more do you need? Why do you need to push for total social homogeneity and conformity towards your position? Like, you don't. So first the argument is, well, you should be tolerant and loving and accepting and just let people do what they want. Until it's someone's against you, then it's like, oh, now we need to enforce our position on other people. So it's the blatant hypocrisy of their position, where they take advantage of egalitarian, open, kind of libertarian white people and their kindness and their tolerance, and then once they have a foothold, once they do that, once they get those people on board and they have a foothold, then they'll spin it complete 360 and use totalitarian like enforcement principles to like shun anybody and depose anybody who ever dissents, right? So complete hypocrisy in their position.
Society targeted towards the LGBTQ plus community. Now, no one's saying that you have.
Who cares about words? Who cares about it's harassment? Words online. So we're not allowed to express. We're not allowed to be mean. Is that what you're saying? Is we need to weaponize the law and we need to weaponize social programming against people and forcefully program them with stuff, with images in their institutions, in their businesses, and schools. We need to forcefully program people. We need to weaponize the state to program people because they're mean to us and they have a different position than us. That's basically what you're saying.
Have to go to Pride, Piers. No one's saying that you have to involve yourself with Pride.
But you do, because it's shoved in your face. It's on the front of stores. That's why it's on stores. It's because everyone has to go to the store. So it's forced in your face. It is forced upon children in school. It's being forced in the education. It's being forced on by professors and by the teachers. It's being forced by the advertisements, by media. Anyone who's anti-trans, people will get blacklisted in the algorithms. And other ones who are pro-trans get promoted and uplifted by these algorithms. It's astroturfed and promoted by big corporations, big business, big media. So this idea that, well, it's not being forced on you, you can just not go to Pride. It's like, well, no, actually it is forced on everyone. And then the entire point of the movement is to be this loud, obnoxious thing that's in your face. That's why everyone changes their logo to a Pride logo, is because it's deliberately in your face. That's the nature of the movement. Now you're going to lie and pretend that this annoying, obnoxious movement is just, you don't have to. You can just live your life. You don't have to engage in the Pride Month. The whole nature of it is this obnoxious, in-your-face enterprise. So how dishonest of you to pretend like it's just this innocuous, mind-your-own-business, self-existent thing.
I go outside. I live in Los Angeles. I don't see rainbow flags everywhere. So I'm confused what you're talking about.
Are you retarded? LA doesn't have pride flags. They have them. That's like one of the most gay places ever. You're actually meant to be retarded.
Los
You walk down the
Angeles,
street and just-
you must be joking, but you can barely
No, that's a
move
joke.
in Los
I live in Los
Angeles.
Angeles.
I've got a house in Beverly Hills. You might as well put a pride flag over the whole place.
I'm sorry. I've been to those areas. Not Pride flags
right,
are
yeah.
everywhere. And when you live in Beverly Hills, right? That's specifically like not even right next to downtown. So that's where most of the rainbow flags would be. If you've
But
actually been
here's
to
my
LA.
point.
So
Here's
what?
here's my serious
what?
point to you. If you actually want to do something constructive for, say, the trans community, for example, wandering around with
That's just a blatant lie. That it's not in your face. The entire nature of the movement is to be in your face.
LGBTQ plus, and no one can ever remember now how many letters and digits there are on these.
You just said it.
It gets but it gets bigger and bigger. And I've seen one with 2 in it and all.
Yeah, no, it's not this simple. First of all, LGBTQIA plus 2 is too much. It's too much. Second of all, there are more people, there are more genders, there are more groups that are included under that umbrella that are not universally codified, or formalized. So this idea that it's this concrete defined thing. No, it's not. Don't lie.
All sorts of stuff, a two-spirit, whatever. It's all.
All it is IA plus.
Yeah, I know, but then there's 2 and everything.
And that's a lot. That's LGBTQIA plus. I don't know a single acronym that's longer than like 4 syllables.
It gets ridiculous, right? And this is the problem with these things. It's never ending. It's like there were 2 genders, then there were 10, then there were 80, then there were 100.
Yeah, and what you'll notice, Piers, is that it's this ever-growing, ever-consuming, demonic thing. It's not just like this simple, just can we please have some rights, please? Okay, I'm just going to go into my room and have my rights, and thank you. No, it's just like, okay, now we need a giant 10-letter acronym. Now we need flags everywhere, and we need an entire month for Pride. So all these points, Piers, proves that it's not just some innocuous, it's not just an innocuous, tolerance for homosexuals. It's a movement that demands a lot more, and it tricked you. It tricked you into thinking it was just, we just want rights, and we're just trying to mind our own business, and we just don't want to be harassed. No, they want total domination. And people like you, Piers, who are moderate and nice, gave them the platform and gave them the acceptance to you gave them the megaphone to promote this, and you gave Satan an inch, and now he's taking a mile.
All of it's nonsense to me. However,
it wasn't like this,
however,
then that,
if you want to think that, it's a free world. Here's my point. If you actually want to make a constructive difference to, say, the trans community.
Okay, but this gay dude over here, how are you going to act so smart and smarmy and like, I'm so smart and these guys are so dumb? Whereas Jay Dyer presents you with a valid philosophical dilemma, very famous Is-Ought dilemma by David Hume. Just basic. I learned that in Philosophy 101. It's not hard. And you didn't even know it existed. So how are you going to act like you're so smart when you don't even know basic philosophical dilemmas? It's kind of embarrassing.
And trans rights and protect trans people, then the absolute worst
way...
way
like you just got humbled, and yet you're going to act race smarmy.
to go about that is the way that the trans lobby has tried to do it, by eroding women's rights in things like women's sport. That has exposed so many trans people to mockery, abuse, and the rest of it. And I would say that rather than spending all this...
Yeah, like the transgender sports, it's kind of dumb, but at the same time, it's useful because it reminds people that there are biological differences. And when you see it in like an MMA match, it reminds dumb idiots that, yeah, actually men do have a giant advantage over women, and that can't be neglected. And this whole trans thing is bullshit, because when you're in the ring fighting for your life, or you're engaging in some extremely physical sport, you can't pretend like, oh, men and women are the same. There's no difference. In athletes, where people are pushed to, or in athletics, when people are pushed to physical extremes, those physical differences become obvious. And it's a useful example for us and the people who are anti-trans to demonstrate that, hey, your movement is bullshit. Look, because when it's actually pushed to the test, like in sports, then it all falls apart. And it's good because it makes people realize that trans is bullshit, and it's a helpful example to convince people to stop supporting transgenders is in sports and in the washroom.
This time and effort and money on flags in Pride Month. What about just actually getting people together to understand that eroding women's rights is the worst possible thing to promote trans rights? Would you accept that?
I mean, that's kind of true. By allowing men to become women, you're actually eroding what it means to be a woman. You're eroding their rights and their right to distinguish distinct faculties, like their own washroom or their own category for sports. So, yeah, that's a valid point.
Okay, so then if we were going to be talking about eroding women's rights, we'd have to talk about people that, you know, someone like Andrew Wilson supports, like Donald Trump, who was held civilly
Okay, that's a deflection.
liable of sexually abusing a woman, who bragged about
Well,
walking
hang on,
the
That's a really blatant like deflection. That wasn't at all the question. So he's gonna get mad at Andrew Wilson for not. Oh, you didn't answer my question. See, he didn't answer my question. Remember when he asked like, is homosexuality a sin? He like pressed Andrew on this question, and now he won't even answer Pierre's question up front. He's like very obviously deflecting within the first 3 seconds towards Andrew Wilson and Donald Trump. So it's like, you want to make this about Donald Trump and Andrew, and you're gonna like complain that Andrew dodged your question. It's like, come on.
Let's stick to my question. Don't bring Trump into it.
I promise you I'm making a point relative to this.
All right.
He bragged
Smoky
about
man
walking
bad. Smoky man bad. Smoky man
bragged-
bad.
You're very childish. He bragged about walking
All you
into the
can
changing rooms.
do is focus on me. You can't even answer to his question, dude. He's just.
I'm
but
promising
Andrew
I'm
Wilson
answering it right now.
bad.
You're cutting me off.
But Smoky man bad.
You're cutting me off. I'm trying to answer it
bad.
right now. Respectfully, I'm trying to answer it right now, but you're not allowing me to.
Okay, well, answer without distracting into Trump and stuff. Just answer the question.
Well, I'm giving an explanation, right? So he bragged about walking into the changing rooms of girls in Miss USA because he quote unquote owns the place to inspect them without their
Forget
consent.
Trump. Forget Trump.
I promise you, I'm making a point here. Would you like me
You
to
have to
finish,
get to the
please?
point a bit quicker. Come on.
I promise you I am. I've had 15 seconds. Okay, so specifically, right, people like Andrew Wilson do not call that type of stuff out when it's explicitly harmful towards women's rights.
You're playing what's
right? Trans
about
people
I'm not
being
interested in what about
So what? That's an argument from hypocrisy. It's a tu quoque. It's not a valid argument. Saying well, they're hypocritical is not a valid argument. So you sidetracked to just make a fallacy. Good job.
I haven't done that. So as somebody like me, talk to me, Parker, talk to me, right? As somebody who has always...
So see the intellectual dishonesty of the leftists? They evade the question. They go straight for the jugular by trying to ad hom their opponents and shame and demonize them. And they engage in fallacious argumentation by an argument from hypocrisy. So great job, leftists.
Supported.
I was going to refer to trans
someone
people.
who's
You're not
always
allowing me to
supported
speak to yours.
trans rights, trans
This is
people's
incredibly
rights
disingenuous.
Well, I have always supported trans people's rights to fairness, equality, and safety. Right to the point.
These guys are on Adderall. Like, look at them. They can't sit still for 3 seconds. They're like constantly fidgeting.
That it began to erode into women's rights to the same thing. And that's my point to you. Why waste all
This
this
guy's clearly on stimulants. Like, look at this guy.
time, effort, and money on virtue signaling for Pride Month, when in fact there's a real problem going on which remains unresolved because too many people on the left and too many young people go along with this absolute farce of trans athletes in women's sport, which exposes trans people around the world to extra mockery and abuse.
But you'll
you're saying
condemn the
we're
mockery and abuse from people like Jay Dyer, and these are...
Man, they can't make any good argument without relying on ad homs and pointing the finger at their opponent. You literally can't. Oh, like he asked you a question, and let's go straight to making fun of and trying to bait Jay Dyer and Andrew Wilson. And that's because that's what they're doing. Is they want attention from these bigger creators, and they want to bait them and poke and prod them to get them to respond in a particular way. So they're just clout chasing and like being provocative and deflecting from the question.
All he has is ad hominem.
Condemn that.
That's all
Well, I'm
he
saying
has.
you're going to get the mockery when there is something so obviously grotesquely unfair.
Can I respond
Parker,
to
you
this
got
as
your
well?
hand up very politely, so answer me without
Yeah,
mentioning
so,
Donald Trump or Andrew Wilson.
Yeah, okay. So I can't mention the person on the panel, but specifically
No.
in terms of trans people,
Yeah, you actually can't because this is a debate. You're supposed to be debating positions and ideas and arguments, not people. So actually, yes, that would be an ad hom.
trans people are not specifically going to be harmful towards women in these particular spaces, given that they've met the conditions of multiple years of HRT.
Have you been
plus
fought?
and/or
Okay,
they-
have you
and-
been fought?
Can I
Okay,
please
sorry,
finish?
sorry.
Can I-
Hang on,
Piers,
hang on.
please let me
No,
finish.
Parker, you can't make it. Parker.
Also, he's arguing HRT. HRT does not dissolve the biological differences between men and women. Yeah, it might help slightly. It might slightly decrease muscle mass, but it doesn't do it enough to actually make them on the same level as women. And it's not just about testosterone or estrogen. It's more complex than that, the differences between men and women, especially physically. There's a plethora of other things that make men better than women. They have better eye-hand coordination. They have better response times. They have better upper body strength, better lung capacity better, stronger hearts, physically stronger hearts, like bigger hearts. What else? A lot else. So it's not just hormones. Like, it's more complex than just hormones.
Literally, as you've said this today, it's been
I'm
revealed.
finishing, Piers.
Today,
Piers, I'm trying to
wait
explain.
a minute.
I'm trying to explain, Piers.
You talked about safety.
This is disingenuous.
Literally today, the Algerian gold medal winner in the Paris
haven't been able to
Olympics
speak.
women's boxing has been
Piers, can I
revealed
speak?
to be a man who should never have been competing.
Piers, can I speak?
No, because you keep deflecting to making it about Donald Trump and Andrew Wilson, and you don't. Every time Piers asks you a question, you've proven that you can't stay on topic. So no.
That's
Piers, can I
why.
You know how people feel when they're on your panels and you mute
Can
them,
I speak
Parker?
without interruption, please?
Yeah, right. Isn't that funny?
All right, answer.
I've been incredibly nice on this panel. I would love to be able to
That
speak.
doesn't mean anything. So what? You've been nice and you've been presenting this. I'm gonna raise my hand. I'm a good boy. That doesn't justify getting more time on the panel so you can deflect and be intellectually dishonest.
Speak without interruption. Is that okay, Piers?
Yes, but answer my question.
It's just very like subversive, like, oh, I was nice, I should get sex, right?
I was trying to answer the question. You cut me off. So specifically, I don't think trans people in these spaces would be harmful after multiple years of HRT and or not going through a male puberty, as I've seen no good evidence from any scientific studies that indicate that there would be an unfair biological advantage
Imam
at that
Khalif,
point.
what are you
Not to say,
talking
listen,
about, man?
Listen. I'm still explaining.
Parker, you're
Listen, I'm
talking
not-
complete gibberish,
Can
man.
I please finish?
Imam Khalif has literally just been exposed as a biological male who won Olympic gold in women's boxing and beat.
No, sure. His argument is that, well, if they go through HRT at puberty, then. But I'm saying it's not enough. I'm saying relying on levels of hormones, because that's what some people say is, well, just go by their testosterone count. It's still not enough, because the advantages men have over women are not just based on testosterone. Testosterone and estrogen alone are not enough to equalize men and women.
Beat up an Italian boxer woman so badly she quit in 43 seconds and said she thought she was going to die in the ring.
That's awesome.
So the whole argument you just put forward is literally disproved by a news story today. That's the point I was making to you. Of
Piers,
course
have
it's
they got-
dangerous.
Piers,
when you allow
Piers, have they-
biological men to get in a boxing ring and beat up women, it is dangerous.
Piers, has that person been through multiple years of HRT?
I don't know. I don't care.
Then they haven't
That
met my set
person
of
is a
criteria.
man.
So how is that a critique of my worldview if they haven't met the set of criteria that I mentioned? Can I please finish? Can I please mention? Can I please mention?
Jay Dyer
Right, so,
Jay Dyer keeps trying to jut in and be like, your whole position is arbitrary. It's just like they're talking about trans women and news stories, and then Jay Dyer's like, your whole position is arbitrary, and like nobody is able to even realize what he's
Again,
saying.
let me please finish. Right, I am saying, if they meet this set of criteria, then they can play, and there's nothing unfair biologically
Yes, there
speaking that you
is,
can
though.
identify.
This is where you're so
scientifically
deluded.
speaking.
You're
No,
so
no, this is
deluded
just you.
because
No,
even
no,
if you
no,
have
Piers,
all the
Piers,
if you
Piers,
have
let me
all the
respond.
treatment,
Let me
you
respond,
still
Piers.
retain
You're
the
not letting
body
me speak.
mass,
This is
the
incredibly
muscle
disingenuous.
mass, the lung capacity. You retain all the biological advantages of being born
Not after
a
multiple
man.
years of HRT. Not
Yes,
after
you
multiple years of
do.
HRT.
Yes, you
Wait, do you want to
do.
bet, Piers? Piers, put money on it. You said you retain every biological advantage.
Muscle
given
mass,
that you have gone through multiple years
lung
of HRT.
capacity.
You don't think muscle mass
You want to
in
bet
one
your
capacity goes
entire
down?
savings of your entire life
Let's
that
bet
I'm right
Piers,
and you're wrong?
Piers,
Isn't that also just admitting that men are the stronger sex? If you're saying that, well, to be on par with women, you have to reduce your lung capacity and your muscle mass, it just sounds like you're admitting that women are the weaker sex. Just saying. If your argument is that, well, men can take hormones to reduce their lung capacity, become physically weaker, then they can compete on the even playing field with women. It's like, okay, that's actually pretty misogynistic, but
Piers, let's bet $1,000 right now that there are lower biological advantages that would specifically exist given that someone goes through multiple years of HRT, right, relative to estrogen.
No, you're missing my point.
Bet
which
that.
is,
Take that bet.
No, you're
Take that
missing
bet.
you're missing my point.
Are you going to accept the bet? Yes or no?
You can have
yes or no?
all the HRT treatment you
$1,000,
like.
Piers.
You can have all the
$1,000.
testosterone. But hang
He's not
on.
going to accept it.
Let
He
me
won't do
answer.
it.
Let me answer.
Crashing
I'll tell
out.
you the bet I'll make. If you want to bet the $1,000,
it.
if you want to bet the $1,000 that if you go through testosterone reduction treatment and the rest of it, that you come out of it with a reduced muscle mass or lung capacity or the other things that give men an advantage, take that bet for me.
Yeah. So I will bet after multiple years of HRT.
okay, so he deflects again. So he's making a different bet. He won't take the bet. So Piers actually offered him a chance to win $1,000. He just ignores it, deflects. Like what a dishonest bastard.
Specifically relating to estrogen, right? There is a reduction in muscle mass. You want to take that bet, Piers?
Yeah, it's bullshit.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter because it's not enough. It's not enough to equalize.
Andrew Wilson.
Okay, let's take that bet. Do you
Andrew
want to take
Wilson.
it? Yes or no?
Andrew Wilson.
Yes or no? Do you want to take the bet?
I'm letting Andrew respond to you.
Yeah. So when you're talking specifically about this, the whole LGBTQ thing has backfired greatly, and it's because this whole thing, Pride is astroturfed. It's literally astroturfed.
Correct.
You just showed us how. I mean, you have a massive corporation putting out propaganda for a children's TV show, showing a bunch of hands in a rainbow, this and that. It's very clear that this is backfiring. And by the way, the trans movement set the gay rights movement back 20 years or more. You can't
Also true
convince
as
us-
well. Like the original gay rights dudes who were like the original rainbow flag would not like anything to do with the trans right movement of today, and it kind of undermines the stuff that they not that I support their stuff, but it kind of undermines their whole perspective of like what they were trying to do.
Parker, even if you're attracted to men who you call women, that the rest of us need to call them women or men. Like they either are or they aren't.
Is this not changing the topic?
You have been trying.
Wow,
to
that's ironic. You were like yapping about a bet for hours. You were yapping about a bet when the thing was about Elmo TV show, and Andrew brought it back on topic, and you're like, oh, is that relevant?
people forever that there's no way to distinguish these things. It's like, look,
yeah, just a complete lack of self-awareness from these people, the total hypocrisy. It's just unreal.
Average normal person, they can tell that these guys who go out and go, hey, how you doing? My name is Chuck, with long hair, are clearly not women, Parker. Like, we know this. And so what happens is you guys gaslight everybody and try to pretend that, hey, you just can't really know. It's too vague. It's, we can't really get to the meat and potatoes here. It's like, we do know, Parker, and you have not been able to successfully, with your TikTok brain, convince people that men can be women and women can be men. You haven't done that, and that's one of the reasons.
Logically, that can't be the case. If men and women are distinct categories, where a man is a man and a woman and a woman, then they can't transition categories, because then the categories would no longer be validly distinct. If a man could be a woman and a woman could be a man, then there would be no definition to being a man or being a woman, just by the nature of the categories. For example, if true can be false and false can be true, then the meaning behind the categories of true and false lose their meaning. They lose their coherence. So by nature of being opposites, men and women have to be distinct categories, and there couldn't possibly be overlap or transition between them, because then they wouldn't be valid categories anymore. I mean, you could say maybe there's a way to transition that would still technically be up in the open, but I mean, that hasn't really been demonstrated.
Reasons that you see Pride falling behind is because of all of this gaslighting. People are rejecting it.
The real reason we don't like Pride is because men don't like to suck dick. Men don't like to suck dick. Women like penis. And most people are not gay. Only 1% is gay, and we're tired of it. We're tired of the obnoxious pride flags. We're tired of Marvel being gay, and we're tired of the programming, and we're kind of sick of the faggotry. So people are sick of it because most people are not gay. And biologically, people are hardwired to like the opposite gender. It's kind of in your biology.
Tax day has passed, but for millions of Americans, is levied.
Men, right? That's a
Your
separate claim
taxes,
from the
children.
original claim about Pride. I do want to address the claim specifically about Pride and how we're addressing like how people are negatively impacted, and as a society we want to address this in terms of this so that we can reduce the likelihood of people being harmed or negatively impacted or not accepted in these communities. That's the point of Pride in these conditions, right? Just because it is the case that issues have existed to a greater extent in the past doesn't mean that we don't have an issue to address today, right? In terms of Pride.
What is the issue? That people aren't agreeing with your position, that there's disagreement, that people don't like you, that people are not nice to you? Is it illegal to not be nice? Do we need to weaponize propaganda by the state and deceptive propaganda in order to enforce social conformity? Is someone being mean to you or not being nice to you valid excuse to weaponize social programming against the public? Like, since when was that illegal? Since when was someone being mean to you or not being nice to you or not being accepting towards you a valid justification for like social mental warfare?
pride, right? Like addressing that we should have acceptance of gay people. We should have acceptance of people in the LGBT.
Why should we though? Why should we force people to be accepted? Why can't I have my own position? On what grounds? Because you can't argue from, well, we need tolerance and we need acceptance, because you're only accepting towards your position, you're not accepting towards my position. So you can't argue from this, oh, be open, be tolerant, just let everybody get along, because now you're pointing a gun at everyone's head and saying, let them, like them, call them a woman. It's like, so now you're not allowing any opposing viewpoints. So now you're this totalitarian, pro-state enforcing it position, and you've completely 180'd from your earlier principle of tolerance and acceptance. So now you have to somehow defend that this is a universal good that must be enforced.
TQ plus community.
So yeah,
isn't it counterintuitive though, Parker, to
I'd
say
like to add one thing.
clearly it's backfiring. Like it seems like it's counterintuitive. If you push the propaganda that hard,
I think it's backfiring.
I want to highlight.
Let me bring in Danny.
Let
me bring in Danny. Let Danny have a say.
Yeah, right. I want to highlight that what the corporations do, right? I might agree with you. Some of them sell out for pride, right? They, it's marketable. I might agree with you, but pride is way more than.
No, it's not marketable. It tends to, and I explained earlier that political kind of ostracization or political extremism is bad for business. By making yourself kind of politically out there as a business, you tend to lose customers. Most business owners know this, so they avoid making definitive kind of extreme positions. And most people don't like sucking dick. Most people are not gay. Most people don't really like or care too much about trans people. They just want to leave them alone. They don't want to see it. And a lot of people, especially straight white men, don't really like seeing gay dick sucking on their television screen or on their storefronts. So it's actually not marketable, and business owners, pretty much any business owner, knows in general that you keep religion, you keep politics out of business. Their job as a business is to sell a product, not push social programming, and it's not good for business to actually enforce these. The reason they do it is because they get funding from ESG investment firms that look for gay politics within a company to give them money. Basically, it's a giant mafia.
Than just what the corporations do. It's how people, identify.
So, but my point being that it's actually not marketable to be pro-trans and be pro-LGBTQ. It's not good for business. You can see this in the go woke, go broke of the Disney movies, Marvel, all this. I said this earlier, but yeah, so it's actually not marketable.
With their sexuality and, kind of anti-bullying agenda, that's very important.
Okay, but what does anti-bullying imply? It implies that you're gonna bully and shoot people if they don't stop expressing discontent for something. That's what you really mean. Is you mean if you say you don't like trans people, or if you say anything mean to a trans person, then we're gonna get the state to come in with a gun and kill you. That's what you mean.
Whatever the corporations do.
Or you mean we're going to weaponize social programming to get people to bully you when you say you dislike trans people.
They sell out, but you can still have pride, whatever they do.
Yeah, you can have pride.
So it's ironic you say anti-bullying, because you're weaponizing bullying of these massive institutions to bully people into social conformity in the name of social and anti-bullying. In the name of anti-bullying, you're gonna use massive corporations, use massive institutions, and like ravenous social programming and basically intellectual, mental bullying, psychological bullying to push this. Oh, we're just anti-bullying bullcrap, which is a lie.
Why do you have
Danny, though?
Why do you have all the commercialization behind it?
It's not organic, Danny. This is not
anti-bullying is inherently
organically. This is not organically people coming together anymore.
There's also nothing organic about a trans person.
To force this. This is a bunch of NGOs
Andrew,
which go to corporations.
if you were actually Christian, you would be in support of Pride. If you were actually Christian, you'd be in support of Pride.
That's
because
retarded.
you'd be okay with accepting people.
Is there a cardinal sin?
Yeah.
No, they're not. Where in the Bible does it say to accept people? That's nowhere in the Bible. Where does acceptance come from in the Bible to say to accept people? That's not in the Bible at all. Yes, you're supposed to love people. Where'd you get the word acceptance? I'm not going to give you that.
Yeah, that's what Jesus said.
Is there a
Where?
cardinal sin?
Where did Jesus say that you have to accept everyone?
Wait,
Pride,
it's not pride in a literal sense. It's pride specifically in the sense of
That's actually a very good point. Pride is a sin.
Pride.
Why are you celebrating sin?
It's not.
Yeah,
pride
you're
in a literal
celebrating
sense.
sin. Literally, what are you talking
You're
about?
misunderstanding. You're misunderstanding. It's not pride in a literal sense. It's pride in the sense specifically where we're accepting people specifically for being gay, right? For
No,
being
but that's
trans,
not
and that's
Christian.
exactly
They're
what
proud of
Christianity.
it.
Wait,
It
Christianity
doesn't
does tell you to do
proud
that.
of it, right?
Christianity tells you to
they're
love
proud of it.
everyone and tells you to
It
accept
doesn't
people who are
only
human
say
beings
that.
made
It
in the image
also
of
talks
God.
about
Gay
boundaries
people,
and limitations. You
But-
have
but
to
gay
have a
people and trans
basis
people-
for virtue versus vice. Christianity is a virtue vice ethic, and your whole ethos is to defend your own personal vices because your ethics are all purely subjective. You
Are
have
you
no
proud to be a
basis for
Christian,
rights
Jay?
other
Are you proud to
than
be a
what you
Christian?
say is the case.
Jay, are you proud to be a Christian?
Sure.
Oh, that's a sin.
That's
Pride.
an equivocation.
Oh,
I didn't make
get
the
'em.
argument. I didn't make the
I mean, look,
argument. That's an equivocation.
We're not talking about the cardinal
What's
sin.
an
We're talking about
equivocation
the sense of
fallacy?
pride. We're talking about the sense of pride that matters.
This is a really dumb gotcha. They think they're so smart. They think like, oh, we gotcha. Haha, you're proud to be a Christian, therefore we got you. It's just like, really, that's just the most low IQ thing ever. It's like, that's not a good argument. And it's not even a good gotcha. Like, that doesn't mean anything. Obviously, it was a rhetorical point to say, hey, look, the quote unquote Pride Month very closely mirrors the cardinal sin of pride. And how would I say that it does it? How does it clearly mirror the cardinal sin of pride? What is the cardinal sin of pride? Well, I'd say it's the cardinal sin of pride because it rejects the mores, the moral commandments of God, in favor of one's own individuality. So it's a rebellion, a rejection of God. So it's that kind of pride. Being proud of your country is like, I support my country. That's a completely different pride. Whereas I would say that the gay pride is about rebellion against God's morals. It's about liberation from God's principles. And so it is actually a direct reflection of the cardinal sin of pride. And it's obnoxious and it's arrogant, which is also part of that cardinal sin of pride. Whereas you're not obnoxious or arrogant if you support like your country or you're patriotic.
You know, to your identity, who you are, Christian.
I said virtue
gay,
vice
straight.
ethic, and you used an argument from equivocation. It's two different uses
No,
of the word.
no, you're equivocating.
that's what
You brought up the
Pearson's
cardinal sin.
No. Yes, you are. I didn't say that pride is the sin that is
respectfully, wasn't that exactly what you guys were doing when I said that?
But it kind of is, though. I would say that there are direct parallels between the Pride Month and the Pride LGBTQ people and the cardinal sin of pride. It is a reflection of that cardinal sin of pride, of Lucifer's pride. This, I'm better than God. I can determine my own ethics. I don't have to accept God's ethics of sexual mores and man versus woman. Because what does it say in Genesis? God created them, man and woman. And you're rejecting that by saying, I can be whatever I want. I can choose to be man. I can choose to be woman. I'm not going to let God's commandments decide. I am going to decide for myself. And that's the pride. That is the cardinal sin of pride that is embodied within the trans movement.
It wasn't used in a literal sense, but then you guys equivocated and said that.
So I wouldn't even give up on that
make
position.
that
If I was,
Andrew made that argument.
I wouldn't like he's giving up, but I wouldn't. I would say actually no, it is actually the cardinal sin of pride. I would not receive that point because then they get the stupid TikTok gotcha, which is it's a dumb gotcha. It's not even a good gotcha, but they get it anyway, so I wouldn't do it.
And I said you don't
So
have
Andrew
a
made a
basis
mistake.
for virtue
So
or
Andrew
vice.
made a mistake. So Andrew made a mistake.
I said you don't have a
right?
basis for virtue or
These
vice.
guys are
We were
clearly on
basing-
stimulants.
We're
just by
basing
the
this
way.
around the
Yeah.
idea that Parker said. What Parker said specifically here was, well, wait a second. If you're a Christian, you should be all about this. And it's like, no, not really. And you haven't really demonstrated how. Why, Parker? Why is it that we need to support homosexuality as Christians, Parker? Tell us why.
Well, I was saying that you should be loving of thy neighbor as you're referencing specifically people, right? Human beings.
Okay, well,
right?
loving of thy neighbor does not mean allowing them to engage in degenerate, sinful behavior that is going to ruin their soul and going to give them massive mental illness.
If you're referencing
love
Why
people
does
and
that
human
mean we
beings,
have to
Qualified as
support
having
homosexuality? Why do we have
No,
to
no,
support?
It's like, yeah, it's just like you're misinterpreting loving to mean support all the degeneracy and sin that they do. Just clearly shows you don't know what you're talking about.
homosexuality.
I'm saying that you have to be accepting of people who are homosexual.
Why
Because
do
you
we
are
need
Christian.
to support homosexuality, Parker?
Okay, we're not saying you need to support like engaging in gay intercourse. We're saying that you need to support people who are gay as they are people created in the image of God.
Why do we need to?
Sure, we can support. But what do you mean by support? You're saying we need to affirm everything that they do? No, we don't. We can try to help them as people, but supporting a person who's gay would actually mean trying to get them to stop being gay. That's actually what that would mean. Support in that context, in a Christian context, would mean support the person by helping them get the resources they need to stop engaging in sinful behavior.
Support them. Why do we need to support them in things that we consider sinful? You want to?
So if I was Andrew, I would say, well, support would be helping them stop engage in degenerate behavior. That's what support would look like.
To support sin?
Wait, I'm not saying that you should necessarily support sin. I'm saying you're supporting the person who engages in sin the same way you're a sinner, and that you engage in sin, yet you should be supported.
So when homosexuals come to the church and they reject homosexuality, they're no longer acting in that way. They are accepted.
Wait, they're not rejected.
What are you talking about?
Wait, by the way, nothing in the Bible says that being.
So there's a
being
vice.
Yeah, that's another thing. I mean, he's making a good point as well, and I think I heard there was like a father who lost his son because he was transitioned. And he made this argument that sexuality is an action, it's a decision, it's not an identity. And it's a complete misunderstanding by the trans movement to assume sexuality as a permanent identity. Even though people often detransition, they change their sexuality, they change their identity. Their identity is fluid, and they admit that. So if your identity is fluid, then what actually grounds it? What actually makes it an identity other than you just choosing to arbitrarily label yourself as that? Obviously, it's an action, and it's distracting from the fact that it's a degenerative fetish.
Virtue ethic that they're not understanding. It's not an identity; it's a vice.
Wait,
I want to bring this. I want to bring the pride bit to an end. We're going to move on to the last topic. All I would say is, look, I absolutely do not think homosexuality is a sin. I completely respect everyone's right to have any sexuality they like. I just don't see the point in spending a whole month allowing companies to.
Because it's a totalitarian, aggressive, demonic, degenerative force that wants total social conformity, and it's not an innocuous Oliver Twist begging for one more bowl, just begging, please let me have some rights, sir. It's not this innocuous, tolerant, accepting thing. It's actually a imperialistic, degenerative force, and you will never be enough. It'll never, your support, Peterson, will never, or peers will never be enough. You will have to continually give more and more ground to these people until you yourself are either castrated or sucking dick.
Virtue signal their way into making tons of money out of it. I just think it's the grasping commercialization of sexuality that I find so objectionable.
Is your issue just how long? You just want a week or a day? Like, what do you? Is that the issue?
If you want to have a pride day, fine. But why a month? Goes on and on and on.
It's a month or a day.
Huh?
Wait, couldn't corporations?
If it's a day, it's a day longer than I get as a straight guy. I mean, what about me? Where am I? Where's my day?
Are you bullied for being straight?
We don't have the same issue.
I get bullied all the time.
Yeah, you actually are bullied for being straight. You're called an evil straight white man. You're called an evil cis. You're given this slur. You're called a cis white man, which sounds gross, by the way. I don't know why it's cis. It sounds gross. So yes, actually, you are bullied, and you are intellectually bullied because you're forced into conformity with all the gay people. So if you're straight and you're against sucking dick, well then now you're a bigot. You're evil.
So I'll be bullied on social media all day.
Not for being straight. No.
All right, let's move on. I want to play a clip from Joe Rogan. I'm going to start with you, Jay, on this. This is Joe Rogan talking about the R word.
The R word. Racist.
It's one of these retarded shows where they're screaming. There's the word again. We brought it. Yeah. We were just talking about that. You did it early. The word retarded is back. And it's one of the great culture victories that I think is spurred on probably
Dave Smith.
by podcasts.
Fucking Dave Smith.
Now, Jay, is it a great moment, a great cultural victory that the R word is back, which obviously is short for...
I kind of like it. I like it. Yeah. Retarded. Very nice. I mean, let's also be clear. The word retarded does not necessarily mean a retarded individual, like someone who has a mental illness or someone who has a mental disability. Retarded just means slow. The word retard means slow. So to say someone is retarded, you just mean they're mentally slow, which isn't. It's not necessarily referring to people with a mental disability. It's only necessarily referring to people who are mentally slow, which just could be dumb, low IQ people, not necessarily people with a disability. So it's actually not inherently ableist.
It's retarded. It's mentally retarded. It's for people who are mentally impaired. It was used in
But it isn't, though. It's actually a referent to people who are mentally slow. That's all it means. The word retarded just means slow.
derogatory way against people who are mentally
It's French, retard, like slow. If you look on a sign in a bilingual place, maybe like Quebec or something, it'll say retard, right?
impaired. Why would that be a cultural victory to bring that back?
Well, I'm a big fan of the R word because I myself act retarded all the time and I'm proud of it. In fact, I would actually probably get retarded tattooed across my back because I think it is a cultural victory. I'd love to be able to say what's on my mind. I think, yeah, I mean, well, these guys are retarded as an example. So we have panelists that are retarded. So yeah, I love the R word. I'm rated R totally. And I think that it's a freeing thing. It's a way to.
Okay, so Jay Dyer's realizing that he can't get into serious debate, so he's just gonna make fun of them. Jay Dyer has two modes. One, which is total philosophical demolition, total philosophical demolition and destruction, which is he just goes straight to like their worldview and their foundation and philosophy, and then he has make fun of them and call them idiots and act like a goof. So it's funny Jay Dyer has two modes, but he's realized that he can't get into a real discussion with these people. They're not smart enough, and that Piers Morgan himself and his audience are not smart enough. So it's better to just be aloof.
Express the way we express things in the 80s and the 90s without problem. Like, you can go watch Bill Murray comedy movies and they're great because
but people used to hang on, people used to use the N-word, 30, 40 years ago, right?
Yep.
But then
I champion all the comedians
but that
use
became
the
something that was taboo in society because it was deemed to be very offensive.
Look at this TikTok. This guy is like, he's got a thumbnail brain where he has to, everything he does is like for a thumbnail. That's funny.
To black people, the R word.
It's like how women will like think about moments or think about stuff that happens in their life and like organize it to try to be like more Instagrammable. They'll be like, oh, well, look, I'll eat the sandwich from this angle because I don't want my face to look bad for a picture. You know what I mean? So this guy has like thumbnail brain, TikTok thumbnail brain, where he's like, I need to cover my face and look really surprised because that will look more dramatic for a thumbnail.
I don't think it is.
The use of the R word is deemed to be very offensive to people who are genuinely mentally
Look at
impaired.
this guy. He's
and they
he's
don't
literally
like
doing a
Making
Mr.
foot
Beast face.
like he's like freaking out over there.
Yeah,
but
yeah, I'm sorry. You just said it's
but
justified.
there's a difference between taboo and what's wrong, really wrong. I don't equate the two.
All right,
Taboos are
Parker,
not equated
your
to
response.
what's wrong.
So here's my question: do you think that Jesus would say the N-word, and do you think Jesus would say the R slur?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I don't see why he wouldn't. I mean, would Jesus joke around and have fun? And I mean, Jesus beat a bunch of people up with a whip in a temple, right? So he called Pharisees snakes, pit of snakes. Jesus isn't afraid of using bombastic, offensive language. So no, I don't think he would.
Jesus does say jokes and slurs in the Gospels. Yes, he talks about.
So Jesus
He
would say
talks
the R
about
slur and
the
the N-word.
equivalents in his day.
So
Yeah, he
Jesus
calls
would
people
say the
dogs.
N-word and the R slur.
He
That's
calls
not the
people
same
dogs,
thing as the N-word and
which
the
is a
R slur.
reference
Yeah, because those words didn't exist back then, you idiot.
to you guys' advice.
Parker, do people in your friendship group ever use the R word?
No, never.
It's just a taboo word.
Yes, I think it's incredibly wrong to use. You shouldn't use it.
People in
And
your
honestly,
friend group
fact
use
that-
the N-word.
Can I
But
please, can I
and
please
out of
respond?
interest,
But why?
Parker, what is
That's
your
another
right?
good question. Is why are these things wrong to use? Because it's mean. Oh, it's mean. Oh, it's not nice. That's how like people really need to like realize how low IQ the atheist, like normative secular moral system is. Is it literally just boils down to, well, that isn't nice. Well, that's not nice. That's not. Oh, that's offensive. It's like a 50-year-old Karen. It's like a 40-year-old like nervous anxiety-ridden Karen who's like, oh, that's not nice, don't say that, that's mean. That's literally what the ethical system of these people boils down to at the end of the day.
Rationale personally for not using it.
I think it's incredibly harmful. In the same way
How
that we
so?
don't use other sorts of slurs because they're harmful, I think that
How are they harmful? In what way are they harmful? In what way in what way is a word harmful? It hurts your fifis or hurts your feelings?
Use this word because it's harmful.
Hurt my feelings. Should you not argue?
So no, specifically, we're saying it meets a threshold of harm, right?
So is calling someone a pedophile harmful because you're slurring them with a harmful label with lots of negative history attached to it? So you're being mean to pedophiles. So you shouldn't call them pedophiles.
Because the R slur and the
whose threshold?
My threshold. My
Your
threshold.
So
is
it's
arbitrary.
subjective. That's a subjective
Yeah,
argument. Thank you. So it's only your personal subjective taste.
We're obviously we're
If
talking
it's
about
your
under
personal
my
subjective
Can I
taste,
please
then it can
finish?
also
Can I
be
please
mine.
finish?
So
Okay,
that's
well
why
then,
it
Parker,
doesn't
it
work in an
doesn't
argument.
reach our
It's a bad
threshold,
argument.
Parker.
All right,
It
Andrew.
doesn't reach. What's wrong with Andrew? Andrew's kind of cracked out too. Like, did he do some blow beforehand?
Fine, that would be.
Parker.
I understand, Andrew. That would be your perspective on the matter. But given my perspective, I would say that meets my threshold. Are you saying it's okay to use the N-word?
Well, okay, but then you can't make universal oughts. You can't say that, well, then we need to enforce this on everybody, or that something is wrong universally for everybody if it's only your personal subjective preferences. I mean, that's a huge fuck up that Parker just made. Because this whole like subjectivism thing just crumbles into absurdity very quickly. If you try to say, well, this is just my preferences, well, then you can't tell me what I'm doing is wrong because it's only wrong from your perspective. Maybe it's not wrong from my perspective, right? So you can't then enforce it on everyone else, and you can't make universal moral ought claims. You can only say that you personally don't like it, which means it's meaningless. It's arbitrary. It's only to you. It doesn't apply to anyone else, and why should anyone else listen to your personal subjective preferences, right?
And it's subjective, and it doesn't work as an argument.
Wait,
Andrew,
wait, why
is it
do you
okay
think
to-
people that
Andrew,
wait, I
Andrew,
have to ask you,
hold
why
on,
do
hold
you
on.
think
Yeah. Parker. Is it ever okay to use the word retard?
No. Is it okay for you to use the N-word?
Is it even okay to use the word retard to reference the word retard?
I think it's wrong to use it in general. Can you please use?
Can you answer my
tell me,
question, and then I'll answer yours? I promise.
Jeez, Andrew Wilson is like fucking crazy. What the fuck?
It's
Is
wrong.
it okay to refer to the word
No.
retard if you're explaining the word retard?
Say R slur.
So you can't. Okay, so you can't even.
Well, I'll be
use
honest.
the-
I don't even know what they meant by R slur because I just say retarded all the time. It's also not ableist because it doesn't necessarily mean a retarded person. First of all, you say, well, that's what it means. Not really, because most people who use the word retarded aren't consciously thinking, oh, I'm slurring people, or I'm referring to people who have a mental disability, who are like 60 IQ with drool in a wheelchair. That's not what they're thinking. They're just thinking like a dumb motherfucker. That's what they're thinking. So this argument of like, well, you're actually it's referring to, it's ableist, and it's referring to retarded people with a mental illness. It's referring to people with a mental disability. That's actually not true. It just means slow. So that's actually false.
So just the word itself. Okay, so here's the thing that's so funny about this, right? Is like ultimately when we say
Am I able to ask a question
retarded,
yet?
yeah. So I wouldn't use
That's
the
fucking
N-word. Here's
weird.
why. When I say that, if somebody says the N-word, what ends up ultimately happening, there's not really too much in the way of equivocation there. Retard is not actually referring to retarded people, though. Basically, ever. Nobody ever says it, Parker, to refer to somebody who's actually retarded.
That doesn't change it.
99%
Wait,
of
if
the
you're,
case
wait, hold up.
use
If
of
you're
a
using
word-
the N-word to refer to a white person, it's still wrong. Would you use the N-word to refer to a white person?
Well, it's a false analogy.
I mean, in some
Yes, I would. I call people niggers all the time. Like, stop being a nigger. Yes. It just means like, don't be. It's kind of like retard. A nigga.
circumstances, I think that you can use it.
I didn't mean. It was like the Boondocks episode where they're like, I don't mean retarded to mean. I don't mean gay to mean stupid. I mean gay to mean gay.
Comedic sense, that's hilarious. Sure.
You think white people using the N-word is okay in any circumstance?
Yeah, comedic senses especially. I think it's fine.
That's disgusting as fuck.
Oh my God! Oh,
Then
what, is that an
your
argument?
subjective basis.
Is
There's
that
no
is that an
basis.
argument, Parker?
Wait, me calling something disgusting because I think it goes against my
Oh,
moral
you think it's
intuition?
disgusting?
What's
Okay,
the
right.
argument?
Homosexual.
Why should anyone else follow your subjective preferences? What if they have their own different set of subjective preferences? What if Jay Dyer's perspective, individual preferences are that it's okay? How can you make an argument against that? I thought this was a debate, not a comparison of preferences.
Sexuality is disgusting because
Am I
it
able to
goes against my
finish?
moral
All right, let me bring
intuitions.
in Danny.
Can I respond?
I like how it devolved into the N word. That's pretty funny.
Hang on,
seriously didn't let me speak.
hang on. Let me bring in Danny. This is what NBC said, NBC News, when they covered the return of the R word. They said, while its use is percolated.
And for every left-wing person, please explain how it's harmful. How is it harmful? They have these like vague, like, well, it's stereotyping. It just devolves into like HR nothing prattle. Like whenever someone explains how it's actually harmful, the demonstration of harm is just not there.
In the comedy world for years, only recently has the word and discussion of its return become more normalized. That is fueled in no small part by a sense that the tide has turned both culturally and politically against those seeking to keep the word out of the popular.
Kids, I gotta find some Bowser saying the N-word. That's my favorite clip. Mario Kart 8, Bowser says the N-word. Let me find it for you guys. Bowser N-word ass right there, perfect. There you go. That was it. There it is. Thank you, Bowser. All right, back to regular scheduled programming.
Lexicon, but the battle lines are not as clear as one might think. And there's no doubt that's true. I mean, what is your view about this?
I mean,
what you very quickly realize, guys, is that if you're an atheist, you don't have some kind of moral code that's grounded by anything. It's just made up. Even if you have a moral code that you just arbitrarily made up, what's stopping you from just arbitrarily choosing it or arbitrarily shifting it or moving it? How do you know it isn't just a product of the current culture you're born in? What if in the future being bigoted against pedophiles is evil? Now you support pedophilia and you think it's okay for 35-year-old men to rape 5-year-old girls. And what if that's the sexual mores of the future? How do you know that they're more wrong than you? What if you're the bigot? What if you're the backwards bigot who's born in the wrong time period? And you're the guy born in the 1920s who hates homosexuals and is bigoted and stupid. How do you know you're not him by tomorrow's standards? And what you realize is when you ask people like Piers Morgan or Jordan Peterson or Andrew Tate or these random two TikTok brain people or yourself, if your morals are not based in some kind of commandment or divine entity or divine revelation, then they're just arbitrary. You're just making them up based on what you feel and what you feel like and what your preferences are and what the normative culture around you is. And it's just a bunch of idiots just, oh, well, I think this, I think that. No, I think this. I think this. It's just a bunch of like arbitrary, meaningless ramble.
We got to remind ourselves why people like us are against use of the R word, and especially in public places, right?
Yeah.
It's because it was a term, I believe, like technical term for mentally disabled people, and
Nope, it's actually just a term for people who are mentally slow. It's a French word.
You know, we don't want to demean those people or accidentally offend people that have children.
Things can also have dual reference. So one possible referent could be to mentally disabled people, but that isn't the necessary referent.
Or relatives or friends that
Could also just be referring to people who are mentally slow, who are dumbasses.
That are mentally disabled, right? And
just because, and that's also a genetic fallacy, simply because the origin of the word is that of referring to people with mental disabilities does not mean that that's the way it's used today. So no. More fallacies.
It has that connotation, unlike the word dog. When Jesus used the term dog, right, there's no such connotation, right? You'll have to be reminded.
Kind of, there kind of is. There's a derogatory slur nature behind calling someone a dog. I mean, you call women bitches. Bitches means dog, right?
And why it's considered to be a slur, right? I mean, it's like you forgot.
Yeah, but so is like the word. So is the word moron.
Made up.
So is the word moron. The word moron had a really negative societal connotation, and it still does, and people use it all the time, just in lieu of the word.
Or troglodyte. Troglodyte is another, or Neanderthal. It's another technical derogatory slur.
Retard. They'll just say you're
Right,
a
but that's
moron instead of you're a retard. It's
the
like
R word is more
you're
recent.
hang on.
Matters.
You're begging. Hang on. You're
Okay, so I can't use these terms because they are ableist. Okay, can I call people shithead? How about that? Is that a better word?
picking and
arbitrary.
choosing. Yeah, you're picking and choosing which thing to be selectively offended by. You're not. I don't. So, like, let me ask you guys this honestly. I want you guys to answer me fucking honestly. Does the word retard actually offend you?
Yes, yes. I think it's fucked
You,
up for you to
Danny?
use. I've been
Does it
very
actually
clear.
offend
It's
you,
fucked up.
Danny, when somebody says
Yes.
the word
Wait a minute.
retard?
Yeah, it does.
No, they're lying. They have to say that. People deep down know that most people who use the word retarded aren't thinking about ableism, or they're not thinking about mentally disabled people at all. So, but they have to say that. They have to say it. So I don't know why Andrew asked that question. They weren't going to be honest. It was foolish of you to even try to get them to be honest. So.
It
So
does,
if Zach
especially in public
Galifianakis,
places and professional places.
so Zach
like this.
Galifianakis does some when he does comedy and he does a movie and he makes a joke and says retort. Is that also bad?
I'm confused the context of what you're referencing. Is he specifically trying to
No, wait a
refer to
minute.
the
Now, so
Arsenal?
now
If he is,
context
then
matters.
yes.
So now the
Yeah, he's
context
trying to
matters.
allude to the word retard.
I don't. Okay, then yes, that's wrong.
Yes, it's
Okay.
wrong.
I
So
thought you
it
were
is
saying
like
like someone.
Any
I thought you
word
were. I
that
thought
references
you-
another word now is wrong, like moron.
So specifically, in terms of the one I thought you were referencing, I thought you were referencing like someone responding to an argument. I thought the particular term that you
No,
were using.
Zach Galifianakis in.
I mean, it's a good point. I mean, if retard is wrong because it references mentally disabled people, why isn't moron wrong by the same standards? It's arbitrary.
comedy movies saying retort
I
as a
understand.
joke instead of retard.
So if your
Yeah, and
friend
I think
says
that's
to
incredibly
Parker,
fucked up to use.
Okay, so now also any word
yeah.
that refers to the word retard is now wrong, like moron.
I think if you're intentionally specifically trying to use a word right in place specifically of the arsler, specifically as to create the same type of outcome as the arsler,
So any
and I do
word
think
that could
in
refer to that word is
particular
now wrong.
intention, I think that particular intention would.
So you can't
definitely
say
be
the word
wrong.
moron. So now you
Right,
can't
say the word moron.
Well, what about this? What if I use the R word, but I'm not implying it as to be a slur against mentally disabled people? What about that? Because if now the qualifier is that, well, it's referencing a slur against disabled people, what if I use the word itself, but in a way as to refer to maybe the French etymology of the word, which just means slow, not as to mentally disabled people with like some kind of genetic disability or birth defect or something? What if I just mean it to mean people who are slow and just stupid? Because stupid doesn't necessarily mean that you're disabled.
You don't necessarily have that intention. It doesn't meet the
so
particular
this is
threshold of harm
you're
as
just
well.
spiraling into insanity because
That's not. I gave two
subjective.
conditions to separate it. I gave two conditions.
Whose-
Wait, it being
your
subjective is not a
conditions are
critique.
arbitrary.
Wait,
Yeah, that's who cares.
wait.
up.
Wait, it being
They're
subjective is not a
subjective.
critique. That's not a critique against
Yes,
the
it
view.
is. Yes, it is.
No, it's not. How is that a critique?
Yes, it is. If something's purely subjective, then I can come with all the same claims with all the same force, and there's no way to resolve the two. That's why purely subjective arguments fail.
Wait, there not being a resolution, particularly between the moral disagreement of me and you, isn't a critique, particularly of my perspective.
It is, because your perspective, you admitted it's subjective. And if Jay has his own subjective perspective, then who's right? Why can't Jay have his own completely subjective perspective? Why can't everybody have their own subjective perspective? Who are you to get on your pedestal and argue on behalf of your subjective perspective, your subjective worldview? And why should anyone listen to yours when they could just have their own subjective worldview, right?
Then you can't say anything is morally wrong. There's no ought from an is.
Wait, I can say something is morally wrong under my perspective. You're misunderstanding subjective morality.
You're not giving.
Can you, wait,
you
I have a
can't tell me
question.
why
I have
it's
a question.
wrong, morally
I have a question.
objective.
There's no such thing as subjective morality, because morals by nature are universal dictates. Otherwise, they wouldn't be morals. They would just be personal preferences.
If
I'll
I
ask
can
you this
also
question.
counter it.
Can I ask you this question? Do you think that morality is true dependent upon God's stance or independent of God's stance?
Ultimately, it's grounded in God.
Okay, so
Right,
it's
and God
subjective.
is a subject. Yeah, God is a subject.
Oh, that's
Man, that's retarded. That's really retarded. It's because it's based on God, it's subjective. No, it's not.
it's not a subjective argument. The argument.
Wait, God is a
The argument is
subject.
that it's objective.
God's
The
a
fact that a
subjective.
person
God is
makes an
subjective.
argument doesn't make the argument subjective. Your argument
God is
is
a
pure
subject.
subjectivism.
Is God a
Two
subject?
different things. It's a category error.
Is God a
How's that a
subject?
category error?
It's two different categories. A subjective argument for
We're
ethics
we're
is
two different people too, right?
different than
how's it
a
relevant,
person
right?
who's a subject making an argument. Those are two
The
different.
point is that God is a
categories.
subject.
Oh, I see what he's saying. Yeah, that's a good point. Because I didn't understand it at first. Yeah, what is the difference? Well, the difference is that an argument can be objective, and it can come from a subject. So God can make an objective claim from his own from his own self as a subject. But that's different from an argument itself being based on subjectivism. Basically saying, my argument is of personal preference. So you can have an objective argument from a subject. That's, well, this is an objective argument. It's universally true for everybody. It applies to everybody. It's a claim about the entire world. And my claim holds true all across time. And it's not just for me, it's for everybody. That's an objective argument. And you can make that as a subject. An individual can purport an objective argument that is meant to apply to everybody and universally across time. Or you can have a subject who purports a subjective argument. You can have a person, a subject, who says, my argument is just my personal preferences and it's only for me, and so on and so forth. So arguments can be subjective or objective regardless of if they come from a subject or not. So that was like very confusing.
Subject is not an object, right? We're subjects, right? We understand morality.
Okay, but it's a fallacy because the argument can be objective or subjective regardless of who it comes from. Regardless if there's a subject behind it. The type of argument is what's in question, whether it's a subjective argument or objective argument, regardless of the origin of it, whether it comes from a subject or whether it comes from, I don't know, like thin air.
That's you're equivocating again.
Look, can we bring this back to the point here?
No, you want to run away.
No, you can't.
Wait, God having his particular view on morality is no different than me having my view because we're both subjects.
The argument is that it's an...
No, because God doesn't make a subjective argument. God is not saying, oh, I am God, and me personally, I think that killing is wrong, because I am God, and just me personally, just for myself, I think killing might be wrong. No, God is saying it is wrong to kill. Objectively, it is wrong to kill. So that's the difference.
What is it, Jay? What is the subject? Jay, what is the subject?
This is retarded.
You're equivocating on the fact that a subject is making an argument versus the argument being subjective.
No, you said
that's a philosophical category error.
Jay,
this is like talking to children.
I asked you.
It's a category error, you idiot.
I gave you the youth throw dilemma. I asked you if it's true dependent upon a stance or independent of a stance. You said it's dependent upon God's stance. That's subjective by definition.
I said that the
argument. No, the stance, because it comes from a subject, does not make the argument itself subjective. That's what you need to understand, is that an argument can come from a person or a subject, and the nature of the argument itself can still be subjective. Like, it's only to me, only applies to me, it's my preference, or it could be objective, meaning applying to everyone. It could be universal, could be outside of time and space.
For Christian ethics is not a subjectivist ethic, and because God is a subject, it doesn't make the system subjective. That's an equivocation.
What do you think
error
subjective
on your
means,
part.
Jay? What does subjective mean? What does subjective
Purely
mean?
relative to the individual.
Okay,
so true dependent upon a stance.
Yeah, but when God makes a claim, it's not completely relative only to himself. He makes it universally.
Is God an individual?
That doesn't mean that the ethic is subjective.
It's
an objective ethic.
These retards, these TikTok brain retards. So you can have a person who makes an objective point. So when God makes his moral dictates, he's not saying this only applies to myself. That would be a subjective argument. God is saying it applies to everybody.
You're just rephrasing. You're substituting the word individual for subject.
I'm asking you if God is an individual. Yes or no, Howard?
That doesn't mean that the ethics is subjective.
Yes or no? Who's running now?
It's an epistemological argument that's different.
Let me bring Andrew. Andrew, you wanted to get in here.
Jay's getting cooked, so he's got to.
What are you going to say?
Jay's getting cooked.
You're making a dumb mistake of language.
Hang on. Let Andrew come in, please.
Yeah. So I mean, this is kind of obfuscating from the point. What does any of that have to do with the point of retard? So, and you being offended by the word.
They're not really helping each other. Like, Andrew's kind of collapsing. I feel like I could kind of wingman Jay Dyer better than Andrew could. Andrew's kind of like, they don't have unity. Like, at least Parker and the other gay guy, they at least have some kind of, they're both fairly unified. They're both like hyenas, like both waiting to take turns attacking the leopard, and the leopard and the lion are just kind of like fucking around. They're not helping each other out. They're not unified. They're not really helping each other or defending each other in the 2v2, which is not very good. They don't have good cooperation. They don't have good they're They're not playing as a team.
Are you listening?
Yeah, can
What?
you hang on? I'm talking to Parker, not you, Danny. Calm down.
I'm
Wait,
talking
you've
to
been
you
cutting
both,
people
right?
off this whole
I don't
time.
understand. I don't understand, Parker. When a friend of yours comes over and he says something to you, like you're in private, and he's like, "Hey, hand me that," and you toss it and you miss it, and he goes, "You retard." You literally stop the kind. You go, "Don't say that. It's very offensive." Do you say that? It's very offensive. I really don't like it when you say. Do you dress him down, Parker? If you have someone who calls you a retard in a friendly way.
I'm
like to
sorry.
say
That's the funny part is they don't. All these liberal cowards, none of them will actually be like, "Hey, don't say that. That's offensive." Because yeah, they know they would get fucking bullied to shit. So all these like slimy leftists who apparently have such strong morals, they'll hang around, or they just won't talk to these people. They'll just avoid them. But they'll never actually do it in person. They'll never confront like a straight white guy and tell him not to say that. And if they do, then they lose. They'll slime around and like not say it openly.
I couldn't hear you.
I want to post something to Andrew.
If you have a friend, shut up, Danny. If you have a friend, Parker, and your buddy comes over and he like tosses you something and you drop it and he's like, you retard. You dress him down? Do you go, "I can't believe it. You called me a retard." Why?
Yes.
That's hurting other people's feelings. But who's around Parker? Who's around to be Parker? Who's around to be offended except you? Who's around to be offended but you?
That doesn't change whether or not I think it's wrong.
Yeah, so I don't
let
understand.
let Danny respond.
Well, he could say, "Well, I'm correcting his behavior in general, so he doesn't do that with other people and offend them." You could say that. So these are like bad arguments from Andrew.
Danny?
I want to give Andrew a hypothetical. Suppose there's this unknown society where if you show this signal, everyone's extremely offended. They'll get very angry, like people get angry.
Who cares? But that's the question: is who cares about hurt feelings and being offended? Why is that the basis for our ethics? And that's kind of what Dyer was trying to say, but he didn't get to the point quick enough. He kept like devolving into more complex foundational philosophical questioning. He didn't get to the immediate punch, which is like, why is people getting offended the basis for our ethics? Why is that why is that the case? And what grounds that? Like, how do we know that's not going to just change in the next 20 years? Because, I mean, all the liberal movements have continually changed. They've been changing. They changed over the years, and now we're where we are today. How do we know things won't continue to change? And why is hurt feelings the basis for our ethics?
At, typical slurs like the N-word, right? Would you go around just doing this?
Logic? The Vulcan sign for logic?
Do you understand the hypothetical?
What are you posing a hypothetical?
So imagine you go to a
can you use really small words, bro?
Okay, imagine a hypothetical, right, where you're going to a society you don't know about, but all you know is if you do this.
I'm imagining a hypothetical.
Let me finish. You're not hypothetical, so I'm having to repeat it. So let me finish.
Yeah, repeat it. Use small words.
Let's say this.
These guys are funny. These guys are so dumb. They don't realize that they're being trolled and fucked with right now. This is like the complete lack of self-awareness that these morons have.
It's extremely offensive in that society. Really offends people. Would you go around just doing this to troll people, or would you not do it?
I would definitely tell them to live long and prosper, bro.
Okay, you're just not engaging in the hypothetical. You're not a serious person.
What do you mean? That is serious.
What I'm trying to illustrate is that if a term really offends a friend of someone, right, or a family member or something like that, why would you use the term but to piss them off?
The trouble is that we've got to a place in our society.
The problem with that hypothetical is that the hand signal, if there is no such thing in real life as there's no correlate or analogy between a hand signal that does nothing but piss people off and words that convey meaning. So the word retard is not only used to just piss people off and like make fun of ableists. It's used as a word in normative dialogue to refer to dumb people. So it has a purpose outside of just being there to offend and anger people in normal dialogue, which is just to convey that you're an idiot, right? It's just idiot. You're an idiot. I mean, idiot has more of a history and more of a derogative connotation towards it. I feel like if anything we should ban idiot, right? But yeah, so it's kind of like the analogy doesn't work because the hand signal that only offends people, that doesn't exist in real life. It's a false analogy because the words we have in language, not only are they not solely to offend people, they're almost rarely ever to offend people, or they're rarely ever to refer to ableism or to refer to slavery. That's not how they're used in normative dialogue, and so it's a misunderstanding of the word and its nature. You think it's only there to offend people, and it's like you're not understanding how most people are using it, clearly.
Society where the language police are now so
Thought
out
police.
of control that we can't even
Piers.
use the word in hospitals mother, because somebody who
A birthing person.
is a trans person, trans man who's having a baby objects to the word mother. And that's the problem with language police, is that if there's no natural societal limitation to it, it's never ending. Somebody somewhere will always be offended by a word somewhere. And at the moment in society,
I mean, that's a good point, because right now it's only a minority of people who are actually getting offended, because there's only a minority of these leftist, queer nut jobs, right? So if we're going to let the minority of the population determine our ethics by, I don't know, what offends the minority, then yeah, how do we know that we're not offending other minorities? The other question is like, okay, why is it about not offending minorities? Why is it not about offending majorities? Like, why is it based around a particular gay minority? Why is our ethics of not offending people not based around, say, like the white majority, or about, I don't know, blacks? Like, why do our ethics have to revolve around ethnic and random minorities in the first place? Even the people by which we orbit our ethics around is arbitrary.
it's like there are 1,000
And also, like, not offending people is an arbitrary decision.
words that upset people. That's my problem with it.
And Danny, what do you do in that
okay,
same
okay, wait, no, let me-
hypothetical if
let me
half the
respond.
people
Let me-
mean it a
let me-
different way?
Parker, you wanted to respond to that?
No, I want to respond to this particular point. Christians get oftentimes very angry about specific terms you use, whether it be in the context of their particular beliefs, whether it be transubstantiation, calling them a cannibal specifically under their view, if it is the case that they think it's the actual like body and blood of Christ that they're eating specifically within and drinking within communion, right? That us calling them a cannibal, they get really, really angry with, or us blaspheming the Holy Spirit, they get really angry with.
And you don't
right,
seem
under
to
their
care about doing
perspective.
that, do
And
you?
they're
Well, I'd say the difference is that those are carrying with them theological implications, and they're direct attacks on their religion and their identity. Whereas when someone calls you a retard, they're not trying to offend or undermine ableists. They're not like, or disabled people. They're not like deliberately going after disabled people and trying to offend and hurt them and attack their identity. Even if, you know what I mean? So it's different, because when you call a Catholic a cannibal, you are actually deliberately trying to undermine the Catholic worldview and trying to like ridicule their position. So it is a direct offensive attack on them. So that's why they get angry about it. But even if that was the case, let's say that's your rights. Well, so what? I don't care if Catholics are offended. Let them be offended. That's not a reason to like force them to force social programming onto people.
No, I don't. They're the tone police when it
Yeah,
comes to
right.
that. You guys
So,
don't
see,
talk.
you're totally
You guys don't. You
hypocrite.
guys
You're
don't
totally
talk about that.
hypocrite.
No, it's not, because I'm not a Christian.
Yeah,
I
it
don't
is.
hold those perspectives.
Yeah.
It's also like the Catholics aren't running around like censoring people and socially programming people, so that's more the issue.
Well,
that's
hang
my
on,
point.
hang on. That's
Yeah,
okay.
so why
Hang on,
should we
hang on.
care?
That is fascinating. So,
Yeah,
in other
exactly.
words, you don't mind doing the slur against Andrew over
Against
things that he
Christians.
cares very
Yeah, because
passionately about
they're-
religion, because
Which is ironic, because they're the majority, and there's way more of them than there are trans people.
you
It's
don't
really
share
subjective.
his religion.
Wait,
Therefore,
how is-
therefore you
Wait,
can't
how is that a
offend him.
slur?
Therefore,
How
you
is that-
can't
how is that a
offend him.
slur? How is that a slur?
He said,
Calling someone a cannibal isn't a slur, because you're trying to undermine and ridicule their religion.
would you use the
No,
word
no.
cannibal? You said,
The
yeah, you wouldn't
point-
care.
wait,
That's not a
and here,
slur.
the
That's
point-
not a slur.
hang on.
Says who? How? Why not? It's pretty derogatory. You're calling someone a monster. That's a pretty slur. Calling someone a cannibal, eating their own kind, like that's obviously a derogatory slur. How are you going to pretend that that's not a slur?
It is to him.
They just
hang on,
redefine
no,
it.
it's
It is
not.
to
No,
him.
it's not. Anything.
Well, a slur was
Parker,
what offended
Parker.
people. What offended people. It was
See, so
supposed to be
hang
what
on. So
offended
Parker,
people.
you just
Parker just admitted that it's a slur. He admitted that it's offensive and that it's derogatory in his statement about it. When he brought it up, he admitted it was a offensive, derogatory thing. The derogatory thing that offended people when you called them a cannibal. So clearly it's a slur.
Decide
whatever
what-
offends is the
hang on,
slur.
hang on, just to be clear.
It was clearly a slur.
Hey, Parker, you are the slur monitor, are you? You decide what isn't a slur,
Ad hoc.
and
I'm
therefore
sorry.
you,
We all
have
Parker,
definitions.
can say what the fuck you like, long as you have
Dumbass
decided
Parker.
it's not a slur. You see the flaw in the argument.
It's all ad
Here's,
hoc.
obviously we have
I told Parker-
obviously we have definitions on what slurs are. I don't know why that's a confusing thing to you.
No, the only reason that wouldn't be considered a slur is because like nobody cares about defending Catholics.
Do you have a definition?
it's
Obviously, you have a
defined it.
definition.
I would say saying to a
Obviously.
Christian that he's a cannibal because of communion or whatever, I think is utterly offensive. Yeah, and a slur. But you don't, because you don't share the religion. Therefore, you
Don't
language monitor Parker.
Well, they just don't care, so they don't like. It's not about consistency. It's not about logic. It's not about coherence. It's just we don't care, so we don't care.
I've decided it's not a slur. And so as long as you don't think it's a slur, and this is my problem with your generation,
thee, but not
is
for
that you're
me.
so easily offended, except when you're offending everybody else.
Yeah, except when you're calling every single straight white guy a racist, evil bigot, and you're shaming them and demonizing them and saying all men should kill themselves and men are the worst, and they'll spit the most vile. Isn't it so ironic? I mean, that's another great argument that we need to put in our repertoire, our arsenal, another bullet in the chamber, is they get so offended and so mad and so up in their ass about offending minorities and offending people, even when you're not, but then they'll go spit the most vile, demonic hatred against Christians, against straight white people, against nationalists, against people who vote for Trump. They'll spit the most vile, evil, hateful, demonic, like acidic spit from their mouth whenever they're talking about straight white Christian men. So it's so ironic that their whole system is based around, oh, don't be mean, don't be offensive, don't use slurs, don't offend anybody. But then it comes to white, straight Christian men, they'll engage in the most vile hypocrisy, disgusting rhetoric, like most offensive, hateful language towards all the time. It's so ironic.
Wait, if it genuinely is the case that it leads to a particular level of harm that I would say meets my particular threshold of harm, I would say
You think whites being genocided in their own country, whites being ethnically replaced, white people in South Africa having their farms taken away from them by black people, you think that doesn't constitute harm? You think white people having their country overrun with immigrants who take their jobs and lower the minimum wage and destroy their quality of life and ruin their public services and drain their taxes isn't an obvious implication of harm? Oh, but a trans person gets offended. How's that harm?
we shouldn't use that term. All I was doing is describing specifically there are terms and words Christians think are very harmful to them.
Well, cannibalism is a criminal offense.
Listen.
Hang
well,
on.
Parker, there's a lot more Christians than there are
Cannibalism is a
nonsense.
crime.
You're
accusing it of him of being a criminal.
No, actually, you're equivocating because I'm using their own definition of the term cannibal specifically because it is the case that you're equivocating. Because that's not, I don't think it's actually.
Well, not really, because the equivocation is hidden. And that's why you're using the word cannibal. It's because you're trying to imply through this kind of derogatory slur that they're somehow like vile, evil monsters. Or else you wouldn't use the word cannibal. You would just call them Catholics or transubstantiation people. You wouldn't go out of your way to call them a cannibal. So yeah, technically it's an equivocation, but it's kind of like a hidden equivocation because you're relying on people making that equivocation fallacy to like negatively imply things about Catholics. So you're weaponizing the equivocation to slander Catholics.
Like the body and blood of Christ, so they didn't actually, in a meaningful sense, violate any laws. Does that make sense?
And I don't think I'm actually calling somebody mentally.
So yeah, it's weaponizing that equivocation in order to slander Catholics.
Slow when I say retard either, Parker. So what?
It still meets a particular threshold of harm that I would consider.
Okay, well, it meets a threshold of harm to me when you call them. Yeah.
All right, we've got to leave it there. It's been a fascinating
well,
clash of.
Andrew.
Hang on, no, we've got to leave it there. It's been a great clash of cultures. I think we should do this again. I think both sides
happily.
are learning from each other and beginning to bond. Thank you all very much.
Come back without the mute button again, Parker.
Okay, you can keep interrupting, buddy. You're so scared.
Yeah, so takeaway, Andrew and Jay were kind of weak a lot of the time. I mean, they could have argued better, I think. They didn't have very good teamwork, but the atheists are just so out to lunch. They literally have subjective morality, which is the most retarded position ever. And the hills that the atheists want to die on, like the R word being a slur, are just such, they take such bad positions that even if Andrew Wilson and Jay Dyer don't make very good arguments, they still demolish them because they're just leagues above them. And then also the leftist atheist weirdos are like taking such unpopular, indefensible positions that they just lose anyway. And they're just out to lunch. Like, they just don't know what they're doing. They don't have any background in philosophy. They don't have any background in really debate, aside from like random TikTok bullcrap. So I'll debate them. Well, I don't know their names, but the two atheists on the panel, I'll debate you. I'm not even a good debater, but I could wipe the floor with them pretty easily. But I doubt they'd ever invite me on because I don't have 1 million subscribers. I'm not Jay Dyer with 200,000 or Andrew Wilson with 200,000. So they're not gonna ever debate someone like me because they won't get clout from debating me. But maybe if I find their TikTok stream, I could go find them and try to go on there. But I doubt it. I doubt they'd take someone like me on. But anyway, that's my video. Let me know what you guys thought. Love your inputs. Don't be afraid to comment what you thought. If you thought my points were bad, or if you thought I was wrong, go right ahead. Let me know. Sometimes I'm not always the most concise in my language. Sometimes I take a while to articulate what I'm trying to say. I think I'm getting better, though. I think I'm more clairvoyant in my message, in my presentation. I think I'm getting better at speaking in general. So maybe I've improved. Maybe you can let me know about that or what I could do better. But anyways, with that concluded, we're going to stop the video here. We'll let everybody out. I doubt anyone made it this far in the video. If you did, comment banana split ice cream in the comments if anybody made it this far, because I don't think a single person ever will. But with that, I will head out. See everybody later. Cheers.